Okay, good evening and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, June the 5th, 2019. At this moment, I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the hdsb.ca website. And I'd also like to ask that you turn any of your devices to silent mode. There are no trustees absent this evening and no senior administration is either. So this evening, Trustee Reynolds will be honoring the land.
Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Ottawattaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest this evening? Seeing none. Next, we're up to the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Oliver and Trustee Reynolds. Thank you. Are there any questions, comments about the agenda? No. Okay. There it is. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are up to the Inspire Awards. Everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated: families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. The Inspire Award is given to an individual or group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring, initiative, innovation, and creativity. Award recipients choose where they would like to receive their award, and this evening we have a number of them. So I would like to, I'll be calling up a trustee and the recipient or someone who's representing a group. So first I would like to call up Trustee Amos and Mohammed Zia. If you'd like to come forward, please. Yeah, you are. Okay, so Mohammed is a teacher at White Oak Secondary School. Students say their teacher has a unique way of explaining difficult concepts clearly, and that his respect, patience, and dedication to his students is limitless. Mohammed develops positive relationships with every one of his students and ensures he is always available to offer help outside of the classroom. Mohammed fosters an atmosphere of curiosity where the exchange of ideas is encouraged. He leverages technology to maximize classroom efficiency and engagement and guides students in their learning in a way that it develops their passion for the sciences and critical thinking skills. Students describe Mohammed as a mentor, role model, leader, and teammate who pushes them to strive for excellence, participate in extracurriculars, and volunteer. Congratulations. Next, I would like to call up Michelle Snyder. Michelle is a teacher at Udinawi Public School. She is continuously finding ways to incorporate technology into her classroom and prepare children for tomorrow's workforce. Michelle goes above and beyond to ensure students have exemplary technology education by running numerous initiatives through the school year and arranging opportunities for students to learn with their technology. Parents describe Michelle as a dedicated, focused teacher, and they appreciate her ability to encourage innovative learning and engage young students in STEM subjects. Congratulations. Okay, next I'm calling up Trustee Shuttleworth and Trish Wraithby. Trish is a guidance teacher at Nelson High School. Colleagues describe her as empathetic, understanding, and an inclusive educator. Sitting on numerous committees in the school, such as the English language, learners, equity and diversity, and health and wellness, Trish is an important advocate in the Nelson school community. Trish is involved in arranging for therapy dogs to visit the school to support students and staff and help alleviate stress and anxiety. She has coached many sports teams at Nelson and planned various successful parent events at the school. Congratulations. Okay, I am next up. So I'm doing two sports. So that way. So is it just he's representing.
Okay, so I'd like to invite Chair Gerbens and invite Dave Hamill to come up, representing the teachers and mentors from the Robinson Robotics team. Welcome. So let me tell you a little bit about this group. The teachers and mentors from the Robotics team are being recognized for their outstanding leadership and tireless effort in all they do to support students participating in FIRST Robotics. This group volunteers countless hours to facilitate practices and competitions and manage the coordination and scheduling for a really large and engaged group of students. The group works with students to fundraise, find sponsors, as well as spread awareness about FIRST Robotics. Parents say that Team 2200 would not be the same without the help and dedication of these people, and that through their support, the team is able to learn, grow, and succeed, and most importantly, have fun. Thank you so much.
Okay, the next one up is Gary Allen and Pawnee Creek. Who's got that? Oh, thank you, Trustee Shuttleworth. It's not written here. And I'd like to call up Daryl Halton, please. Daryl is a teacher at Gary Allen High School and is the lead teacher for the Pawnee Creek Project Trailhead. Daryl has been a huge support to students involved in the program and has had a positive impact on many families. Through experiential learning opportunities, Daryl has helped students build confidence and discover strategies to learn and be successful in ways that fit with their individual needs. He has helped students take on leadership roles in their community and discover passion for being outside. Parents describe Daryl as a gifted and caring teacher, and they appreciate his ability to inspire students to learn and believe in themselves. Congratulations. Okay, so next I'd like to call up, on behalf of the Bronte Creek Project Trailhead staff, Kristen Stansel. The Bronte Creek Project Trailhead staff are being recognized for their dedication to providing a unique outdoor learning experience for students. They care each of these staff members devote, hold on a second. The care each of these staff members devote to the students in the program is inspiring. Each member ensures that learning is presented in a way that challenges and engages each student, recognizing the individual learning needs of a diverse group of youth. Through hiking and camping trips and experiential learning activities, these staff members instill in students a love for the outdoors. Each of these people has positively impacted the lives of many students and their families. Congratulations. Okay, and I'd like to call up Russell Thacker and Kate Nazar, please. Okay, Russell and Kate served as co-chairs on the Nelson High School Council from 2015 to 2018. Russell continued as chair and will finish his term this June. Each of them has demonstrated leadership, respect, and teamwork. Their ability to think outside the box has enhanced student programming, supported students, and inspired others to get involved. Russell and Kate's presence and advocacy has been felt in many aspects within the Nelson school community. By collaborating with staff in the community, Russell and Kate have provided input and advice to achieve school goals and enhance learning opportunities and various activities that benefit all students. They have touched the lives of many, inspired students, and helped set Nelson on a successful path for the future. Congratulations.
Since I've known Connor since kindergarten.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Chair Gerbentz back to the front and invite Colin Bain to come up. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Colin Bain is being recognized for his contribution to students of the HDSB through the Halton Learning Foundation. Colin spent 27 years as a respected teacher and coach in this board. He influenced many students and remains a huge proponent of education. In 2011, the Colin M. Bain Scholarship was established to support students requiring financial support to attend post-secondary education. Colin has ensured more than 200 students have received support for basics such as food, clothing, and school supplies, and for inclusion in activities such as field trips, all essential items and opportunities that help level the playing field for students facing financial barriers to their learning. Over his lifetime and beyond, Colin has been and will continue to be a significant contributor to the education, well-being, and success of hundreds of HDSB students. Thank you so much. As Chair Gerbentz makes her way back, I just want to welcome everybody to the boardroom tonight. Feel free to stay as long as you can. And wow, what a diverse group of Inspire Award winners tonight. It's a good name that was chosen because it is very inspiring. And thank you for those of you that are supporting our recipients tonight.
We are just waiting for the final recipient to arrive. In the meantime, I was actually wondering where's Marnie? Is she in the room there? I was wondering if we could get, there's a couple of group ones. If we could get if we could get the teachers and the mentors for the robotics and the staff that we'll do that at the end now that are. Okay, so would Trustee Collard please come forward? And would Susan McCauley please come forward? Don't worry, Trustee Collard will direct you. Okay, so Susan is the principal at John William Boych Public School. She is an inspiring leader who blends learning and leading seamlessly for the benefit of all who attend and visit the school. Susan can be found in the halls of the school interacting, reading, and connecting with students, in conference room learning alongside staff, and dressing up to entertain students during assemblies. Susan represents a modern leader who puts students and staff well-being first. This is evident through an initiative at the school where staff wear red shirts every Monday that say there is room on the bench to showcase unity and openness to all community members. Susan inspires those around her to learn, grow, and succeed at their highest levels. Congratulations. Okay, so let's do, you want to do the whole group picture of everybody first? With all the recipients? And then we can do one with, I don't think we're going to get the whole team on, guys. But the mentors and the teachers. Oh, we could do that. Yes. Yeah. Hey, congratulations again to all those people that received their award here tonight. But we do have a group of 4 people that have chosen to have their Inspire Award received at their place of work. And those people would be Sam Harper, who's a student at Gary Allen High School in Milton, Sydney DeVoe, who's a student at Gary Allen High School in Milton, Julie Davison, who is the senior secretary at Ethel Gardner Public School, and Jeff Modeley Williams, community member from Cobb's Bread in Heddon Forest, actually. So thank you to all the recipients. And please do continue to nominate people or organizations who support our students and their achievements. We accept nominations online and all through the summer at hdsb.ca. Okay, we are now moving on to delegations this evening. Our first delegate is Nicholas Warburton, Brawny Creek Project. And if you could come forward to the presentation table. You can grab the chair there. It got moved somehow. Do you have any materials that, no, okay. Okay, so I'm just getting my timer here. Would you like to time for me, Vice Chair? Yeah. Okay, so just to let you know, that a delegation shall be allowed, according to our bylaw, up to 5 minutes for the presentation to the board. Delegations must provide new information to the Board of Trustees. Following the delegation, the chair will open the floor to trustees for up to 5 minutes for questions of clarification of either the delegate or the staff. We do have a timer to help gauge your presentation, and Vice Chair Al Harrison will provide 1 minute warning before the end of your presentation. Okay? You can start whenever you're ready.
Oh, I thought I had to hold it. So good evening. My name is Nicholas Warburton. I'm a 23-year-old Brawny Creek Project alumni. And while I was at the program, my nature name was Bagheera. Now, I know we've all heard a lot of delegations with regards to the Brawny Creek Project. We've heard associates who work alongside the Halton region. We've heard parents of students. We've also heard from psychiatrists. But I wanted to bring forward one of the points of reference as a student. So just a little bit of a background about myself. I spent probably about 10 years of my education history in the Peel region, living in Mississauga. And during this time, I found that I was being bullied the entire time, physically and mentally. So that didn't really set me up for a lot of success in high school, I found, because I didn't want to take part in any education whatsoever. I stopped going to classes. I stopped doing my homework. I didn't study. Every minute I was at school, I was not thinking about school. I was thinking about where I wanted to go. So this didn't really set up my future very well. But I was convinced to take part in the program by multiple sources, one being my parents, who were concerned for me because they didn't know what was going on, but they wanted me to have a future, as well as the late Bob Hepburn, who was the librarian at Abbey Park High School, who unfortunately passed away quite recently. He pushed me towards this program as I would always stop by and talk to him, and he knew I enjoyed the outdoors, so he knew of a program that he thought I would enjoy. And additionally, I was also talked to by the social security worker I was seeing at the time, as it was not diagnosed at the time, but I was suffering from severe and periodic depression and anxiety, something that has put my own life at risk many times, but I'm still here, fortunately, and the Brawny Creek Project is one of those things that has helped me stay where I am. Without the project, I would not have been able to move on to university, and I would not be in my final year at Trent University studying environmental studies with the ambitions of becoming a conservation officer. Without this program, I also would not be working for the Conservation Halton as a resource interpreter, where I teach students of all ages from both the Halton region, Peel region, Toronto, York, and Upper Grand District school boards about both First Nations cultures that used to live on this land and still do, as well as the environment that they live with and they respect, or they should at least. Sorry, my phone turned off and all my words are on there. One of the points of being a resource interpreter and teaching students about environmental education is whether to use the fear or the hope that goes along with it. The fear being telling kids that we only have about 10 years to reverse climate change before it becomes irreversible. Or as I've just learned today, that humans only have about 31 years, as reported by an Australian think tank, that we only have 31 years before 90% of our population it becomes extinct. Or bring out the hope that there is something that these students can do. They can turn the lights off when they get home and they're not using a room. They can eat more locally. They can make choices to better their education and better their environment. And this is something that I learned late in my education stream, but I learned at the Brawny Creek Project. We made our own lunches with local food sources, and that's where I learned to cook. I learned about community, and I learned about what it meant to have a small class support you. I only had 10 people and myself in my class, and I had the support from my teachers, Hillary Coburn, or Quetzal as we knew her, as well as, again, the late Doug Jakes, who we knew as Duck. And these teachers provided me all sorts of new information that without I would not be here. What I would like to pose as a challenge, as I do when I'm teaching, is while we are under very hard times right now in the sense of cutbacks as well as budgets. I understand that. It's important to know that the future of the kids who are growing up and going through the education right now, they need those choices to save their future. So.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for our delegation? Okay, I'm seeing no questions. Thank you very much for bringing your story forward. Next, I'd like to call Shaylin DeRoche, also Brawny Creek Project.
Is it on now?
Yeah, that's what you got.
Wait, this one.
Good evening, Shaylin. So did you heard the preamble that I gave the last, so you know you have 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and we'll notify you when you have one left. Okay, thank you. Go ahead whenever you like.
Okay, so my name's Shaylin DeRoche. I am in grade 10. I go to Trailhead right now, and I'm 15 years old. So at my elementary school, that's the boundary, and the smiley face is my house. 95% of my school went to Hayton, and 5% of my school went to Milton District. I went to Milton District, and when I got sent there with none of my friends, except for one, it was really hard because it was really hard for me to make friends, and I wasn't good at that time. So the environmental program isn't going to be available in Milton District. In Milton, if you cut BCP, it's only available in Georgetown, Aldershot, and Oakville. So where am I supposed to go? So people in Trailhead could have had mental health issues. I am not one of those, but I know that a lot of people who've gone there have felt happier, and it's supported them a lot, and same with me. I don't like reading, but in that picture, I'm sitting under a tree reading on my Algonquin trip, and when you're outside, you can just connect with everything, and it helps. And I hate classrooms. Just hate them because it's like a stereotype. You sit there and you have to do pen and paper work or on a computer. And I don't work well with that. I can work 20 minutes, and then the next 50 minutes, I won't work because it's really hard for me to just sit there. There's also a lot of drama in normal school. So I was bullied for my whole life until last semester in grade 10, until I came to BCP. And when rumors get spread about you, it goes around the whole school, and it's really hard to change their minds because people could lie, and it's horrible. When I was at BCP, it got me wanting to learn again because I felt really stupid in my classes because I wasn't the person who could just sit there and listen and get it through my brain. I had to do hands-on things, and when I came here, we got to go outside, and I got to learn with my hands, and I felt normal again, and I felt like I could be myself. The buses are expensive, but it's so worth it for us. Like, that might sound cocky and all, but it really is, because it makes us feel so much better about ourselves. So how I see things is that my school boundary doesn't make any sense. The environmental programs are going to be cut when we need them the most. 7:20 a.m. buses for when we have to go to school for 8:15 a.m. and we don't think straight at 8:15 a.m. 9 a.m. buses for elementary school kids, and they get 9:25 a.m. to start. And parents can't go to work then if it starts that late. So this is a policy that I don't think we should break and that we're not supposed to. And it was made in 2009. So next year, Milton has no environmental program. Georgetown, Oakville, and Aldershot are at least 30 minutes away. Outdoor phys ed is cut in one of my classes at my home school versus 3, and it's all waitlisted. 26% of Milton population is 19 and under, and I cannot sit in a classroom all day. So I made the newspaper in Burlington for BCP, and this is what I got after my Algonquin trip. I got this. I got this from my old school. And my family members. And my family members sent this to me, my cousin. And if my cousins don't have my back, how will people at my old school, how do you think people will treat you if you don't have any confidence? I went to BCP and Trailhead to get more confidence, and it helped a lot. And when I came back to see this, I can't go back to my old school. Can't. And if I do, I will cry every day when I wake up to go. It just really hurts that you're ripping something that means a lot away from me. The school means so much, and you're just ripping it away. And you shouldn't do that.
Thank you very much, Sheilyn. We appreciate you coming tonight. Do you think you'd like to take some questions if there are any from the trustees? Okay. Are there any Are there any questions? Vice Chair Harrison.
Okay, if you can do it, I can do it. Thank you very much for finding your voice. I really appreciate it. So if you could summarize or make the elevator pitch, what does Brownie Creek Project say to you in your heart? What's the really special element?
Everything. When I walk in there, it was a weird school because it's mainly outdoors and it's really small, and everyone was very confident from BCP because they went to Trailhead, and after a week I fell in love with it. Honestly, the second I walked in, I fell in love with it because I knew that I would have fun every day, and just in my heart, I need it still. It would leave a hole in my heart if it left.
So thank you for that. I just want to say that we don't hear from many people like you, Shaylin, and your the graduate that went before you, people that speak truly from their hearts. We hear a lot of statistics and business-like reports, and those have their place too, but I just want to say that I really appreciate your bravery and your honesty and all that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing. There aren't any other questions for you this evening. Our next delegation is Brent Moody about ERA 102 boundary review. Mr. Moody. Mr. Moody, do you require me to read the bylaw information? Okay.
Continuously hit that? My general point was that was a tough act to follow, and my PowerPoint presentation might be a distraction, but there are important things to say. Chairman or Chairperson, Board of Trustees, Director Miller, and ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege to speak tonight in support of the proposed boundary review that I'm speaking on, Proposal 3B, which seeks to amend the current boundary review in the 5 schools that our family is a part of. We speak in support, and I speak principally on behalf of the parents from the Tecumseh Public School, but I think largely also for all parents in that general area. And our support is premised on the fair and equitable distribution of pupils within that catchment area, which also spills into the fair and equitable distribution of resources, programs, and extracurriculars. And our support also hinges on the fact that we're looking down the line, and that if you vote against this respectfully, one of the things that we can see happen is that when eventually the moratorium on school closures imposed in 2017 is lifted, and it will be, that these types of schools, these types of very important local community schools are ripe for the picking when it comes to closure. And we're worried about that. And collectively, all parents that came out to these meetings spoke about this need to have a vibrant, long-term, sustainable local school. And that's important. I must tell you that tonight I'm here to say that there are a bunch of proud parents. There are 266 tigers. I've already screwed up the, oh, no. the tech presentation, which is not a surprise. But we heard some pretty awful things about Tecumseh Public School. A lot of you are from Burlington, a lot of you aren't. But we heard rumors and innuendos about this school, like other schools perhaps. And we chose public education. We chose Tecumseh Public School after exploring alternatives like private school or Catholic school. But we heard about this very unique recipe there, principally as a result of a kindergarten teacher, but there is so much more. And we were within a sliver of going to a different school. Boy, we were wrong. We were so wrong. These are the types of things that this school had facing it in the public. The Toronto Sun ran an article, as well as the Burlington Post, hinging on the disparity between two local schools. Tecumseh, sadly, bottom 20, not percent, number, in all 3,040 schools in our province. You reacted. Your board reacted. This vibrant and strong and powerful group of parents reacted. The teachers reacted, and so did the students. And we made the paper again. Take a look at that. That's a pretty powerful and important piece, that there's been a turnaround there, that all of a sudden this is the little school that could. Here's the type of things that are going on at Tecumseh Public School. There's an important barbecue tomorrow. Some of you might come as a result, but this highlights the important and varied background that our students bring to the community. It's more than just a school. They're out there knocking on doors trying to get people to come to this barbecue. 1 minute? Uh-oh. I'm not going to talk about results, although we have moved up substantially. You know that GSRs translate not only into money, but into vibrant and important programs. This is what we don't want to see happen. Here's what our current Minister of Education says. We're taking time to review the next steps in this moratorium. Look at those numbers, 41%, 56. We don't want one of those schools to close. Financial things matter. This proposal goes a long way. I want to say that Tecumseh, like all schools, is moving the dial forward with all of your support. And this equitable redistribution of student pupils, which translates into, again, resources and extracurricular activities and more parents to help fundraise for those types of things that other schools do, will go a long way. And I really commend upon you to vote in accordance with Director Miller's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Shuttleworth, are you on the list for this? Okay, you're up.
Thanks, Brett, for your delegation. I have a
I was
question.
in the hot seat there. I thought my tech thing went to...
Okay. I have a question for you. So I know you showed a picture of the students with the postcard that your administration created.
Mm-hmm.
By any chance, do you have a copy of that, or could you read the... I know on one side there's an invite to the barbecue, but then on the other side it talks about where Tecumseh is.
Right. I'm going to monopolize your question and show you two photographs, if I might. Okay. Is this going to show up here? These are important photographs that are showing up on Twitter. You have a very powerful superintendent, Rob, who is highlighting the other things that are going on in this school, including the community champion support. Thank you. And this hashtag, "We're in this together," is very important and ties in to the question that you've asked more specifically about this barbecue. And here it is here. There's an invitation that Melanie, one of the leaders of this parent group, who knows more about this than I do, has given me. But the Coles Notes version is it's tomorrow. It's important to this school. It's important to this community.
So on the other side of the postcard, if you look, there's the invitation side, and on the other side.
Right, there is.
Sorry.
Sorry. Oh, right. Yes, this is a quote that my wife and I produced. Is this what you're getting at? Right. I almost was uninvolved in my children's education until I wasn't involved in the planning until we got to Tecumseh. These teachers at that school are so powerful. They have translated, when you have your kids leave your home for the first time, and they do such a good collaborative job between, teaching from home life to school life. And we've produced a statement about how valuable that impact was upon our family, and no doubt will be on others as well.
Thank you.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening, Brett. It was a pleasure to meet you through the process that we just went through. And I wanted to commend you for coming forward to speaking in favor of the solution. We normally only hear from parents who are not happy with the changes that are being made. And yet tonight we only have one delegation about this boundary review, and it's in favor. And that tells me that we've done good work, and that what's coming forward for us to vote on at the next meeting doesn't have a lot of disapproval in the community, because you're the only one here and you like it. So thank you very much for coming forward, and all the best of luck at tomorrow's event.
Can I just add on that for a moment? There was a number of meetings with parents and representatives from schools. It was a stressful process for many people, but this recommendation, I think, takes into account a number of concerns from all groups, which is why, more particularly, you only have me perhaps tonight. So thank you.
Okay, there's no other speakers, but I just wanted to ask how many people are in the gallery that are supporting you tonight? If you want to put your hand up or stand or something. That's great. Okay. Not just Tecumseh and beyond. Excellent. And where are you? Frontenac. Excellent. Ryerson. That's great. Well, thank you all for coming out. It's great to hear the voice of the community, especially when we have to make these tough decisions. So.
Thank you. You know what? It's never been my forte. Good evening.
Oh, it's super, super.
Okay. So that's it for our delegations this evening. We have no presentations this evening. So we are up to our consent agenda. I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that may I have someone who will move, looking at the consent agenda. Okay, thank you, Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Rocha. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for June 5th, 2019. Does anybody need to pull anything? If so, just mark it. Thank you. Trustee Shuttleworth.
I've never done this before, so I'd like to pull part of the administrative procedure. I'm just going to find it for you. Hold on.
Which one would you like to pull?
The criminal record check one, please.
Okay, the criminal record. Any others? Does anybody else want to pull anything? Okay, there's only one, so why don't you ask your question now?
Okay, so my question is, I've looked through that, and we require all staff and volunteers to have criminal record checks. We all get one of these, which is a pass into any school in Halton. And I know that we can choose to get a criminal record check if we want to, but we don't have to. Particularly for me as a student trustee mentor as well, I think I have my own criminal record check, but I think for myself, I don't know. I don't understand why it's not the case that we as trustees need to have a criminal record check. Is my question.
Director Miller?
Through you, Chair Grevance, to Trustee Shuttleworth. As you pointed out, a criminal record check for trustees is not required. So therefore, we're not going to require it. From our perspective, Executive Officer McFadden will weigh in as well, because she is kind of record checker police on our board. But it's about regular and consistent contact with students. And even though trustees can walk into schools, you don't have regular and consistent contact with a group of students or individual students. You may walk into a school, the following week you walk into a different school, et cetera, and so on. The only two that you do have is with the student trustees, but that's a different bar, shall we say, that it's held at. And quite often our student trustees, I imagine when the Ed Act was, are in their 18th year, and often they are 18. So it's, but I'll turn it over to Executive Officer.
Thank you. As Director Miller pointed out, the requirement is in a regulation of the Education Act, so it's not a board requirement, but rather it's a legal requirement. And the genesis for it was the Robbins Report back in the early 2000s, which focused on a case in Eastern Ontario of grooming, sexual grooming of children. So again, that's why the criteria is direct and regular contact. So there has to be an opportunity for that grooming to occur through a relationship that's developed between the trusted adult and the child. So the kind of incidental contact that a trustee would have in the performance of their duties as a trustee in the school would not develop that type of relationship with a child over time, which is why trustees likely were not included in the legislation.
Okay, Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Following along Trustee Shuttleworth's comment, before I ever became a trustee, I became aware of this and wrote a letter to our MPP at the time, who was sitting in the opposition party at the time, and he was the critic for education, and he did say that he would bring it forward to the ministry, and I never heard anything back from him after that. But I was wondering if perhaps we may wish to write a letter, or if this is something we want to leave to the ministry. I'm just throwing it out there. Hadn't occurred to me before that perhaps as a board we would want to write a letter.
Just a thought, maybe we could table this to Committee of the Whole.
Absolutely.
Are we in favor of that, having a discussion?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm seeing a general consensus there. Okay. And Connor, I'll let you speak because I know it's your last night. So if you don't speak now, you don't get to.
Yeah. Thanks. I just had a question about the consistent contact question. I was just wondering whether or not the student senate, in which the student trustee mentors are acting as supervisors, would qualify as a consistent point of contact with children.
There has been recent legislation through the chair. There has been recent legislation that exempts anyone under the age of 18 from the requirement of having a criminal background check. In fact, police forces are no longer able to issue criminal background checks to those under 18.
The regular and consistent, I wouldn't say it's not arbitrary, but essentially the Senate, I know you do other work with the your executive and so on, but you meet once a month, which would not be considered regular and consistent. I know you have some other contacts with them at various times, but so it would be one of those pretty gray areas, because I know as Executive Officer McFadden says, if you're under 18, but some student trustees will be 18, and therefore if they had regular and consistent contacts supervising kids or students or involved with that, then they would have one. But it's difficult to say. And back to the letter, I know we'll have a discussion in Committee of the Whole, but it is not in the regulation. And because it's not in the regulation, it's still individual choice, right? So.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay. Okay then. So if there's no more speakers on the list, so we're going to vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda action items, and receiving the information items. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we've approved and received. Okay, so we are now up to ratification action items. Vice Chair Harrison, do we have any business from private session that requires approval?
Yes, we do. We have 2 items. The first one, be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the resolutions from private session June 5th, 2019, respecting property matters. Report 19088, and I so move.
I have a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Amos. Are there any comments, questions, anything? No? Okay, didn't really expect any. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay, item 2. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board trustees support their Halton District School Board trustee colleagues as they stand for OPSPA positions on the policy development and education program work teams, and that Trustee Collard be designated as the OPSPA voting delegate for the Halton District School Board, and I so move.
Seconded by Trustee Daniele. Thank you. And any debate? Seeing none. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are up to action items for June 5th. We have 2 action items this evening. I'd like to draw your attention to the recommendation having to do with policy bylaw and the policy bylaw review, delegation governance policy procedure, report 19080 on page 26 of your board package. Before we speak about it, do I have a mover? Trustee Collard, a seconder, Trustee Reynolds. So I will now read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the delegation governance policy and the delegation governance procedure as appended to report 19080, and that the delegation bylaw be rescinded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Did you have something? Okay. Okay, all those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, and I'd like to now draw your attention to 422, Long-Term Accommodation Plan. Report 19093 on page 54 of your board package. Welcome, Superintendent Ngoy and General Manager Renzella. Would you like to say anything before I put it on the table at all? No, go ahead. Okay, so may I have a mover for this? Trustee Collard, seconder, Trustee Amos, thank you. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the 2018-2019 Long-Term Accommodation Plan, LTAP, as appended to report 19093, and that staff be directed to submit the updated LTAP to the Ministry of Education, and further that all entities identified on community planning partnerships notification be advised that the LTAP has been approved and direct them to the board's website to review the electronic document. Is there any discussion? Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, I was wondering if you could identify whether there are any changes between this version of the LTAP and the one that we saw back in May.
Yes. Through the chair to Vice Chair Tracy L. Harrison, there was a change that's been reflected in the document. The change reflects the board's decision to declare the Oakville Southwest number 1 public school site surplus to the needs of the board. And as a result of that decision, the LTAP has been revised to reflect that change.
Thank you very much. Of course, this is a change that affects wards 1 and 2 Oakville and has been a point of discussion for the entirety of my time in this particular role. So I think that it will be received likely with mixed emotions, recognizing that the schools that are serving students from Lakeshore Woods are doing a great job, and many families wouldn't wish to change. However, I think that community has, still held a hope that perhaps one day a school would be built. So with this declaration, that changes, and I look forward to working with staff to communicate with the community in a timely way whenever, whatever we can, and moving forward. So thanks.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in putting together the LTAP, General Manager Renzella and Superintendent Nagoy, and all of the staff that were involved, because every year it becomes a more complex document, but you're making it easier to understand and read. So kudos to everyone who's a part of that, because it is getting more complex. My question is regarding the capital funding priorities. Now, if we approve the funding for this, we have an indication from the LTAP what our capital priorities would be. Have we heard anything about when it might be coming from the government? Because I know that Northeast Oakville desperately needs a new high school and another elementary school, and so does Milton. So just wondered if you'd had heard anything.
Through you, Madam Chair, and perhaps I'll start, and if General Manager Renzella has more details, he can jump in as well. We were expecting to receive information on the new round of the capital priority submission a few weeks after the grants for student needs have been announced. We haven't heard yet when that information will be coming, so we're hoping is soon. Typically, there's a few months to prepare the business cases and the priority in which we send them to the ministry, and then a couple of months after that to review them by the ministry staff. So at this point, I would assume that the submission will be sometimes in the fall. Because we don't have any information. So it is being delayed.
Thank you. That's not great information, but thank you for sharing what you know.
There are no other speakers up, but I just want to make a point of order that I forgot to mention earlier, and that is that in our order paper we have something shaded that actually shouldn't be shaded, and it's a letter that the chair is to write regarding capital projects, asking the ministry to give us a capital projects process. And I purposely have not done that yet because we've recently written another letter, and we also, I keep being told by staff that they think that it's coming really soon, but so I've held off doing that for those two particular reasons. But probably if we do not hear anything by the end of the school year, then that letter needs to go out. Okay, but thank you. Oh, Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to mention earlier. I just wanted to mention, just with respect again to that Southwest Oakville number 1 property, and the last number of years, the board has really been unable to pursue action on that front. There's been no PAR guidelines for a bunch of that time, and we're in that particular position again at this moment. So any pupil accommodation reviews, which the ministry has indicated would be necessary when they previously told the board no to funding that school. We are currently not able to pursue the process again because those guidelines are not yet in place. So not just us, but any boards around the province. So it's been an ongoing challenge, and given the numbers are very stable in that community, and particularly compared to other areas of our board where they're growing exponentially almost, I regretfully, see this coming forward. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no other speakers, so we will now vote on this. Okay, all those in favor of approving the long-term accommodation plan. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much for all the hard work that went into that. Of course you can, Director Miller.
Chair Gerbens, I would just like to echo comments made earlier by Trustee Amos to General Manager Renzella and all his staff. The LTAP is a massive document that requires some months of work, and I think often the public doesn't see how much work that goes into that and the planning. So as Director, I would like to thank you and your staff for the work that you've done publicly. Thanks.
Okay, we are now up to communications to the board. First off is number 5.1, student trustee reports. Trustee Clark and Meng.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just going to start with talking about some things about the annual general meeting for the OSTA-ACO and the letter that Trustee Clark and I have written to the Minister of Education. So the final OSTA-ACO 2019 AGM was an overall success and a very good event to attend. And the event mainly focused on introducing and familiarizing the incoming student trustees to the organization so that OSTA-ACO can continue to make meaningful impacts on public education. At the event, there were some fantastic keynote speakers, such as the Minister of Education, Lisa Thompson, and Trustee Clark and I both had a very good time at the event, especially meeting our student trustee colleagues that we've had the chance to work with from other boards. And unfortunately, this will be the last time we will be meeting the majority of them unless we get stuck with them at the university. Not saying that's a bad thing. And for Trustee Clark and I, OSTA-ACO has given us many opportunities and experiences that we may otherwise not receive, and has been an amazing experience to work with other like-minded individuals. So now moving on to the letter to the Minister of Education. So in addition to the documents that the Board of Trustees has submitted to the Minister of Education, Trustee Clark and I have also written a letter. And this letter basically provides an overview of the thoughts of ourselves as well as the students regarding the changes to provincial education. And now I'll hand it to Trustee Clark.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mang. I'm just going to briefly cover the very, very successful Halton Youth Leadership Symposium, which we held about 2 weeks ago. We are pleased to announce it was a huge success. We had over 175 students from all over the board attend. Our workshop leaders from the Student Senate and the Executive Committee did an outstanding job. They got compliments from almost every single student I spoke to at the conference. I also just want to thank all the trustees and staff who helped in the process of organizing the symposium. The input that you guys gave to us was monumentally important in helping us make a successful event. And I also want to thank Director Miller and Leslie Mansfield for being excellent keynote speakers. I hope you know that both of your speeches were very inspirational, very full of hope, and inspire us all to be innovative. And I just want to thank you for coming to HYLS, and I hope that you guys will come back in the future. And now I just wanted to say a couple thank yous. As was dropped earlier, it is my last board meeting of my term. So I just wanted to say thank you to Donna, to Margot, and to Kelly for being such fantastic student trustee mentors. This has been an experience that I will never forget, and it's because of you it was so wonderful. I want to thank the student senators and the executive committee for doing an outstanding job in supporting both Kevin and I in our roles. I want to thank Stuart, David, and Gail, and all of the senior staff for always being right on the ball. You have all the questions, or all the answers to our questions, and I just want to thank you all. And I just want to thank all the trustees as well. You guys, not going to forget you guys for a long time, so it's been a fantastic year. And I also just want to thank Kevin, because this has been a real partnership. And I will never forget the experiences that we've gone through together. So I just want to say thank you. And when we're not on camera, I'll give you a big hug.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that concludes our student trustee report. Thank you.
So we recognize that it's, of course, your last night, and I know that you're going to be back. But we thought that we would recognize you both this evening because you kind of are a pair. You've done great work. So I can't think of, there hasn't been so much passion sitting in those seats. It's been a while. So I really learned actually a lot from the both of you. I hadn't attended a symposium before, and it was fascinating, and I got a lot out of it. So I'm sure that your trustee mentors have something that they'd like to say, but in the meantime.
All right, I'm going to be short and sweet just for efficiency's sake. I want to thank both of you guys, Connor for driving with me to the meetings and Kevin for keeping me awake during the meetings. It's been a great time with both of you. I appreciate all the support you've given me, and I hope that I've given you guys support too, and good luck in the future. Thanks.
I just want to echo. Hang on, let me pause for hugs. I just want to echo everything that's been said both by Chair Gerbens and Trustee Shuttleworth. This is my fourth term as a trustee, and I've worked with a lot of student trustees, and there are some that will stand out for me through the test of time, and the two of you I will always remember the work that you've done and your dedication to this, the strides you've made forward in terms of student voice and ensuring democracy for students within the board and to be heard, and the codifying of the process for student senate, making it better so that as we go forward, each student senate can build on the foundation that you created. We often around this board will talk about legacy pieces. The two of you have truly left a legacy within this board, with our students and amongst the trustees, and particularly with me. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your journey for the last year. It has been an amazing experience. Thank
you. So I'll speak. I spoke a few weeks ago, I remember praising you guys, so I'm a bit fed up praising you too. No, in all seriousness, Kevin and Connor, I know you're here next week, Kevin, and Connor, you're off to Europe for a wee while. I want to thank you as director and on behalf of the senior admin. You guys have been fantastic. You've represented yourselves extremely well. You've represented this board extremely well. There are many people around this province who are fully aware of the Halton District School Board, and you two are a big part of that reason. And you know, one of the mandates of the government is to increase confidence in public education. With young men like you, young people like you, that certainly is working. So I want to thank you for representing us so well and just being good guys. You're really good, you're interested, you're passionate, and for your futures, that's going to carry you a long, long way. And God knows you need lots of passion to go through life. So Keep it up. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. We're up to action items for June 19th. We have 5 action items. The first is number 521, ERA 102 Boundaries, Report 19087 on page 70 of your board package. Director Miller, you're listed as the person bringing this report, but I see Superintendent Pennefather and Superintendent Trufen at the helm.
Good evening and thank you. Through Vice Chair Al Harrison and Chair Grabentz to trustees, Superintendent Trufen, planning staff, and I are pleased to share with you the overview of Burlington 102 Boundary Review. The agenda is there for you to see. The recommendation, background information, process of the boundary review, options recommended by the BRC, and the recommendation of the Director for a decision. On September 19th, 2018, trustees approved a motion to initiate a boundary review for Burlington ERA 102. At the November 28th board meeting, Frontenac was added to the boundary review. As a result, recommendations are before you this evening. We'll speak more about the details of option 3B and the implementation of the boundaries a little later in this presentation. This is ERA 102 and shows the 5 schools impacted. We've given the trustees copies of the current boundaries and the 4 options, so you have those in front of you. These are the current school boundaries, and as you can see on the left is JK to 6, and on the right are grades 7 to 8. Also included, this is the current population and projections from the current boundaries.
Thank you, Superintendent Pennefather, and I do apologize for the glitchiness of the projector. I know the person behind me is working very hard to fix it. First and foremost, just talk to you briefly about the Boundary Review Committee, which is on your left, and the Boundary Review Steering Committee. Thank you, Silver. We had 5 schools invited to participate in the boundary review. That was Frontenac Public School, John T. Public School, Ryerson Public School, Pauline Johnson Public School, and Tecumseh Public School. Also sitting on the boundary review committee and the steering committee was our planning staff, family of school superintendents, Superintendent Etoff and Pennefather. Director Miller also attended one of our BRC meetings, and he also attended the public meeting that was held in April 30th. And I'd like to take this opportunity right now to thank the parent representatives that sat on the Boundary Review Committee over the course of a few months. The 5 schools were very well represented by parents that were committed to the process and committed to developing options. Some of them are behind me right now, and I thank them. I also wanted to thank an opportunity, a unique in this actually boundary review, in the gallery. We had anywhere from 15 to 30 parents at each of our meetings, and I thought that was a wonderful way to voice concerns and voice from the community. So I want to thank the gallery as well who attended. I'd also like to thank my co-chair, Trustee Gray from the BRC, and of course the trustees from the area, Trustee Thudderworth and Trustee Collard. So thank you. In your board report, you have all the communication that we sent out. We gave notification to our 5 school communities in early December, and we continued with communications throughout our process by sending home notifications through our school message system. Also updating our website. Within 48 hours, we had the options that were developed and our meeting notes were posted. We had hundreds of people subscribed to our website, and they were given notifications every time we made a change to the ERA 102, 103 website. They were given notifications, so they were aware of any type of changes that were done. Thank you. Our option development is taken right from our administrative procedures for boundary for schools. And these are, this is the criteria that our boundary review committee and our steering committee use. Specifically, our boundary review committee really looked at viability of programs, proximity to schools. With this particular boundary, reduction of portables at John T. Tuck, balancing overall enrollments, stable long-term boundaries, and student experience. Really, transportation. We're not increasing or really reducing transportation because the 5 schools really are pretty close proximity. This evening, so through our work with the Boundary Review Committee and the Steering Committee, we started with 4 options, and that's what was presented to our open house on April 30th. And from the April 30th meeting, we had 74 responses come in from our feedback form. More than half were from the John T. Tuck boundary. Overall, there was option 3B was favored in the submissions. Overall, 4B and 4D were disliked. And option 8 was favored from submissions residing north of New Street. However, there was also, it was also disliked in numerous submissions. And the final BRC recommendation to the steering committee was 3B, 4B, 4D, and 8. And you have those options. You have the current boundary review. That's the first page of your ledger paper. And then you have the 4 options after that. Okay? I've already talked about this. So over the course of meetings, we gave the boundary review, the steering committee gave the boundary review 4 options to start with. And just in past experiences with boundary reviews, a multiple of options were generated, examined, studied, evaluated, and in the end, 15 options were considered, and we narrowed down to 4 options. Now I'd like to take you through the proposed boundary. This is the recommended option, and this is 3B. And if you're looking at the map, I'll go into some impact statements in a minute, but if you're looking at the map, the biggest change, and if you're looking at K to 6, so the 3B, K to 6 side, the biggest change is students, families residing north of New Street will now be attending Ryerson Public School. And you see the John T. Tuck boundary, which is contained south of New Street, east of Guelph Line, and then to, I believe that street is just a little east of Shore Acres all the way down to Lakeshore. Really no change to Frontenac's K to 6 population. Well, there is no change to Frontenac's population, no change to Tecumseh's K to 6 population, but Ryerson is getting a significant number of students from that area. And if you look at the grades 7 to 8 boundary, I'll just go to the map, sorry, Punny Father. The biggest change again is Tuck. The 7/8, the boundary is unchanged for K to 6. And the change for Frontenac, we are unifying the Pauline Johnson cohort. And what I mean by that is right now, the grade 6s, a large percentage of them, a large chunk of them go to Frontenac Public School, but there is a small number of students that go to John T. Tuck. So we're changing this boundary, their boundary, so all of the grade 6s as a unified cohort going to Frontenac Public School. And we are unifying also the Ryerson cohort, so all of the grade 6s will now go to Tecumseh Public School. And Tuck is a boundary that won't change from K to 8. So here, and again, this is just a little more literature on what it is. So Pauline Johnson status quo, grade 7-8 for Frontenac expands to include Pauline Johnson, and then the Tuck catchments north of New Street will be directed to Ryerson, Tecumseh, or Frontenac. And I say Frontenac because it's that slice from Pauline Johnson. And then the Ryerson boundary expands to include John T. Tuck, north of New Street. And then Tecumseh, they're getting a large number of students entering grade 7 for grade 8 and grade 8. 4B. This is a boundary. Oh, sorry, I do want to go back to 3B, just one comment. If you look at the third bullet, John T. Tuck, current grade 4 students, so if you're currently in grade 4 right now at John T. Tuck, you will remain at John T. Tuck. And part of the rationale is just one last transition. So remember, if they're in grade 4 right now, so grade 6, they may have gone to Ryerson, and then grade 7 to Tecumseh still would have been 3 schools in 3 years. And as the Boundary Review Committee recognized and saw that, and certainly the steering committee recommended that, yeah, you know what, the phase-in starts, so students in grade 3 or under, but grade 4 and up, you're going to be staying at John T. Tuck. Option 4B, again, on the left is the JK to grade 8, grade 6, I should say grade 6, my apologies. Very similar to the previous option. We're increasing students at Ryerson. The John T. Tuck is getting relief because the families residing north of New Street will be attending Ryerson. And again, no changes to Frontenac and Tecumseh on the JK to 6. And in the grade 7-8 boundary, this is where it's a little different from the previous option. Students who reside east of Walker's Line, north of New, they will be staying at John T. Tuck. And so some of the impact statements, it is for Ryerson, it will be a split. It would have been a split. It's a split cohort. So some of the kids would be going to Tecumseh. Some of the kids would be going to John T. Tuck. And then the 7-8 boundary to Tecumseh expands to west of Walker's Line. So that's option 4B. Option 4D is exactly the same as 4B, except for the phasing. This particular option starts with current SKs would stay at John T. Tuck. So that's a longer phase-in, which would take a period of 10 years for this boundary to really take place. And our final option, which is option 8, the K to 6, you see a circle on the left-hand side. So what we're doing is we're expanding Tecumseh's K to 6 boundary west to, I believe that's Cumberland. Thank you, General Manager Ranzella. And then, again, very similar to the other options, Ryerson's catchment is being increased because the family's residing north of New. The biggest change for option 8 here on the 7-8 side, we are keeping the same catchment for John T. Tuck. So not many kids would be going to Tecumseh in this particular option.
Point of order, please, on the maps. On each of the options, the left-hand side is saying grades JK to 8, but you're saying grades JK to 6.
It should be grades K to 6. Thank you very much, Trustee Daniele. Yep. Yep. Option 8 does provide, unlike 4B and 4D, it does provide unified cohorts from grade 6 going into grade 7, but it really does not address a balanced enrollment, especially for Tecumseh Public School, because we're really only increasing the enrollment by 3% with this particular option. So this is just kind of a flow chart of our decisions and the work of the BRC and the steering committee. So the BRC, after our public information meeting, 3B, 4B, 4D were presented. We received, as I said, 74 responses from the community with favorable input, liking 3B. So we really didn't create, and no new option from the community feedback really had a different option for the Boundary Review Committee to evaluate. And really, I think that's the work of the Boundary Review Committee. They spent a lot of time looking at a lot of different options to consider. And then at our final meeting in May, the BRC was very comfortable recommending 3B, 4D, and 8. And then finally, the steering committee met, and we're here recommending option 3B to the trustees for the new boundary.
The implementation of these boundaries would take place in September of 2020. And we have up there step 7 from the boundary review process. And this is, the work is not done at that point, at this point. And between now and 2020, step 7 is very important because this is the stage in the process that our admin would be reaching out to communities to ensure a smooth transition and to make sure the needs of our students are met.
So we are happy to take any questions that the trustees may have at this point.
Director Miller?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Grabentz, Superintendent Podreberic, put the lights on. I want to, I would like to thank the presenters, Superintendent Pennyfather and Superintendent Truffin, and I'd also like to thank Trustee Gray for co-chairing the BRC, and I especially want to thank the parents of the BRC. As the trustees around this table know, boundary reviews are always difficult. There's never an easy one. They're always challenging, and there's almost always some students that have to move or can't complete, continue at the school they were going. This was no different. It was difficult, but we had to come up with a way that made that area of Burlington, all the schools in that area, with more sustainable and stable populations. And I think the recommendation of 3B, which is why I have recommended it to the trustees, does that. And it alleviates the pressures on John T. Tuck. They're all wonderful schools in that area with wonderful staff, and we heard a delegation this evening about Tecumseh, but I would echo that that's true for the other schools in the areas as well, Frontenac, Ryerson, Pauline Johnson, and of course John T. Tuck. So thank you to the BRC for coming up through a difficult process to stabilize populations or enrollment in all those schools. It's better for the students. There's no question it's better for the students because they'll all have a critical mass of kids in all those schools now in which they can participate and have lots of, not program options as we do in secondary, but allows them more diversity in the schools and more opportunities for all sorts of things. And finally, I'd like to thank the Boundary Review Steering Committee as well for their work. Thank you.
We do have a speakers list. Trustee Shuttleworth.
Thank you. I just quickly want to mirror everybody's appreciation for the boundary review parents that came out and helped. Decisions are always difficult to make when they involve change, and I really appreciated the respectful dialogue that took place when we were in the boundary review meeting. So I really appreciate all the support and encouragement from not only the inner table, but also the gallery as well. Being the trustee for most of the schools that are impacted by this boundary review, I wanted to let people know that I will be supporting option 3B, which has been put forward by Director Miller within the parameters of this boundary review. It ticks many of the boxes to ensure that the students of Halton receive the most robust and full educational experience that we can give. It relieves the pressures of over-enrollment at John T. Tuck, and in turn allows students to feel a part of the school community by eliminating the use of portables within 5 years, as well as eliminating a crossing of a 4-lane road for children who do choose to take active transportation to school. This option will also bolster the population of both Ryerson and Tecumseh, which are great schools, allowing for more robust programming and extracurricular choices. And finally, it creates the unified cohorts at both Ryerson and Pauline Johnson. These changes are great changes for our school communities. Now, as I said, I know making decisions that involve change are hard, especially when those changes involve our children. I am confident that the superintendents for the schools, the staff, and the students at the schools will work diligently to ensure that these changes are positive. I know this is a busy week for barbecues and fairs. As Brett said, that tomorrow there is a barbecue at Tecumseh. There's also one at Pauline Johnson and another school up north. I will be attending all of those barbecues, and I really encourage members of the community to do so if they can as well. Thank you.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to the presenters. I also wish to extend my thanks and gratitude to the members of the Boundary Review Committee. They worked diligently. They worked together. They didn't always like the solutions that were being brought forward, but they looked at them with open eyes, open hearts, and open minds. And that's all that you can ask of people, is that they are willing to look at the options. I do believe that they've reached a very good solution, and this solution was reached by the Boundary Review Committee. They're the ones that came up with this scenario, this option, and I'm very pleased to see the work that they've done and how it's come to fruition. I'm also appreciative of the fact that the community has solidly stood behind this particular option. And I will be supporting 3B at our meeting in 2 weeks. And as the trustee for Frontenac, I'm pleased to see and welcome the new students that we will be accepting from Pauline Johnson. Thank you.
Trustee Gray.
And thank you through the chair. This is the second boundary review that I have co-chaired, and I felt like the trustee who had come from away. In fact, I didn't really know very much about the community, and thankfully, Trustee Shuttleworth, in fact, car shuttled me around the community, and I was able to visit all of the different schools and become more acquainted with the challenges that lie in the community. So as a trustee with no direct connection to ERA 102, and as someone who is a real stickler for following procedures, and ensuring meaningful consultation, I can state without hesitation that the boundary review process was fulsome and offered multiple opportunities for students, parents, and community involvement. The members of the parent community worked diligently, as we've heard from the other observers tonight, to explore their options, to respond to inquiries from the community, and also, most importantly, to address the evaluation criteria identified as priorities in the very, very beginning of the meetings that were held. The BRC communication plan was multifaceted, as reviewed by Superintendent Truffin tonight, and I am more than convinced that those who wish to participate had more than enough opportunities to do so. In closing, I'm confident that the members of the BRC closely followed the administrative procedure and that the recommended option is a result of the very thoughtful and careful work undertaken by the members of the BRC. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate the comments made by my fellow colleagues. That's very comforting. It's likely that I'll be supporting this recommendation as well. I like it because it addresses the phase-in New Street as I want to say, a natural divider. And certainly we heard from a delegation that was positive this evening. That said, the community is still welcome to delegate again, and certainly we encourage it. I would encourage, if they have anything in for or against, to speak now or at the next board meeting, so that we can certainly make that decision. But my comment actually is a question. So I would like to make a question this evening, and it is regarding how this phase-in of the option 3B addresses the decision made at the Burlington PAR, in which all students from Tecumseh Public School would be directed directly to Burlington Central. And I note in this 3B that the geographic areas are actually of students who reside in the Nelson catchment. So I was just out of interest, how, if this is agreed to, how it would be messaged out to the community. Would we be rescinding that, or how would we continue this?
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds. Excellent question, and that was a question actually that the steering committee addressed at the very first boundary review committee, that this boundary review was about the elementary schools and the boundaries for the elementary schools. We realized that the PAR recommendation from a couple years ago was that Tecumseh catchment would be going to, all of the catchment would go into Burlington Central, but we made it very clear that this was not a secondary boundary review. This was strictly an elementary K-8 boundary review, and the whatever address in School Finder going to board's website, your high school would not be changed. And it did, and further to that, it did come up like, well, now we're having a split cohort in high school. However, and I believe it was a parent who brought it up, and certainly the boundary review discussed it. You know, when you are going to high school, you have different options. There are French immersion choices. There's gifted options. There's IB options. We now have iSTEM options. So it's not quite the same as, you know, a grade 6 cohort all going together in grade 7. You know, we see and as an elementary school principal for many years, I saw my grade 8 cohorts going to multiple high schools for whatever reason, program choice. So that's how we handle that. That's been in our communication. I don't believe through the communication, I don't believe there's been any emails of clarification. The people in these communities are well aware that their high school is not changing through this process.
Okay, there are no more questions at this time, so we will see you again in 2 weeks when we vote on Director Miller's recommendation. So next we are up to 522 Multi-Year Plan Facilitation Report 19090 on page 75 of your board package. Director Miller, you are up on this.
Thank you, Chair Drevents. Associate Director Bogue will join me because there may be some contentious nature with this, given that the financial challenges the board has, and I expect trustees will have some questions. I just want to give you a quick general background, and it's more not so much for the trustees, maybe some of the new trustees, but more for the public's interest. Is we are coming near the end to our multi-year plan. We have a year left. Under the provincial guidelines, we have to have a board has to have a strategic plan, and it has to be a minimum of 3 years. Ours is 4 years, and we are currently in the 3rd year, and we're going into the 4th year next year for 2019-2020. So that means going into the 4th year, you have to develop a strategic plan for minimum 3 years, but historically we do them for 4 here, so that it's ready for September 2020. One of the challenges we had the last time around, and I think we did a shall I say, a good job in engaging the community and pockets of the community, but we didn't do an excellent job. So that's why this is out here. We're recommending that we go to a third-party experts to help us engage with the broader community around a strategic plan. The strategic plan is the purview of the Board of Trustees. It's not operational. It is what guides the work for the next 4 years, and I think the public needs to know that. So in order for us to go to a third party for this, we're recommending it to trustees, and I'll leave it at that, and then open for questions, and Associate Director Bogue and I can answer them. Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering if you could clarify, in the history of our board, have we ever engaged an organization to help with a multi-year plan? Or do you know if there is a practice held by other school boards across the province? Yeah, and I realize that this is a request to go out to tender, so there's perhaps no dollars assigned to it, but I'm just wondering if you have a ballpark of what you think this could land in.
Through you, Chair Drevents, to Trustee Reynolds, a couple of things. We have all the time used the facilitator to help us do it. As far as I'm aware, we have not gone to a third party to get community engagement. But we have used a facilitator to help facilitate all those things and made suggestions. This is the first time, I believe, and I'm looking at some of the more, some of the veteran trustees that I recall, that we've never really gone out this far. We really want to engage the community, and I think it's given the financial realities that we will be faced with over the next 4 years, I think it's really important to hear what the community tells us, what the priorities are for the community. And I think it's significant that way. The second part of your question, yes, other boards do this. In fact, many boards do this. And I'll let Associate Director Bogue answer the question about the actual process and possible finances.
And in addition, there's a neighboring board actually that has just gone through this process very recently, which we looked at sort of their process for engaging an outside firm as well. Did you ask a question about what this might look like for us then? Yeah, and the financial pieces. So why, I guess, is the question. Why would we go outside when we can do this internally? And we have done this ourselves over the past 2 multi-year plans that I've been involved in. But I think, you know, the richness and the depth of feedback that we could get from our community could be significantly more significant by engaging an outside firm. What these outside firms bring to the table is they bring in expertise in 2 areas, really. One, marketing. So how do we reach those folks that are outside our own board? We can sort of reach our families, but our neighbors and local businesses, how do we reach them? There's a marketing piece there. And then their real specialization is in the engagement process. So where we could in the past perhaps design a survey, something fairly simple, something fairly static potentially, and that might not encourage creative thought. Some of these outside firms have some pretty nifty platforms, applications, software where they can promote online dialogue and discussion, and you can rank thoughts and threads and those kinds of things. And they have the analytics to take that information and find out if there's, you know, if the community's going down a pathway and talking about a thread that maybe we didn't even anticipate. So that's the creative part. And then we could pose additional questions. So it gets us out of our current mindset around the things that we believe are important, and allows us to maybe get some different kinds of ideas to at least bring to the table and have those discussions. So it's that specialization that I think is something that we wouldn't necessarily have that capacity internally. Finance-wise, we could do a little bit of proactive work to find out if from other boards what that range is, but we were thinking probably in the neighborhood of, you know, $20,000 to $30,000, we think. But we'll have to see what it could be less. We'd have to see what comes in if we were to go to market.
Okay, Trustee Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to the Director and Associate Director. I'm interested to know whether or not you will be engaging trustees in the building of the RFP, the criteria, the scope, and whether or not any trustees will be invited to sit on the selection committee. And as a second part, I would like to establish a dollar value to this recommendation, even if it's a ballpark figure, so that we have some sense of what we're committing to.
Through Chair Grevance to Trustee Collard, I have no concerns with, that's not the best way to describe it, it sounds kind of negative. Yes would be the answer. What we put here is a competitive process as opposed to RFP. We're looking at other boards that have used very successful firms, and there may be a provision for us to get a firm without going through an RFP who has been proven to be successful in this work. We have our manager procurement working on that now. If it's an RFP, sure, we can involve trustees, but if it's not and we do this, we still involve trustees in helping them frame what we're looking for. Yeah.
And as to the dollar value, I would like to attach a monetary figure to this motion.
Yeah, not to exceed, maybe. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
You have time to think about it for the,
Yeah,
before
yeah,
the
we'll
next
put in
package comes out,
something
but
that
if you
not
could
to
do
exceed.
that, that would make it more palatable.
Sure.
Okay, there's no one else on the speakers list, so I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks. Okay, now we are up to 523 Audit Committee Appointment of External Auditor, Report 19096 on page 78 of your board package. Trustee Gray, your name is on this. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you very much through the chair. In this report, this is the report that would have us look to Deloitte as performing the annual financial audit for the next year. As you read the report, you'll note that we already have a long-standing term with them, a 5-year term, which began in 2017 and 18. But in moving forward, every year we actually do an evaluation as an audit committee, and we determine whether or not the performance has been satisfactory or not. And this year we determined through the audit that it was a satisfactory performance by Deloitte. And so coming through the audit committee, we stand behind this motion in supporting the continuation of Deloitte in doing the financial statement audit for the next coming, or for this 2018-2019 fiscal year.
Okay, we have one speaker so far on the list, and that would be Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Since this is a status quo report with no change, I would like to request that we suspend the rules and vote on this tonight.
Okay, do I have a seconder to suspend the rules? Trustee Reynolds, that was fast. Okay. Manager Gortmaker, it's in there? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask if any, okay, there is discussion. Trustee Amos.
Is there a need to waive the rules? Is there an urgency that it could wait?
Efficiency is the reason. There's no change. It's a status quo report. There is no change. So approving it tonight just makes it more efficient for us at our next meeting because we don't anticipate any public feedback on this. But there's never been any public feedback.
Okay, but there's no urgency on this.
It's not urgent, but it's efficient.
Typically, we don't waive the rules if there's not an urgency to it.
Okay, we try not to interrupt it while people are talking. Thank you. Okay, so we've heard. Anybody else have any comments about suspending the rules? Okay, so we will vote on suspending the rules. All those in favor of suspending the rules to move forward on this? And that carries, but not unanimously. Thank you very much. So we are going to move forward. And I will read the recommendation in. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board authorize the appointment of the external audit firm Deloitte LLP to perform the annual financial statement audit of the 2018-2019 fiscal year. Moved by Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Collard. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to the next one, which is 524, External Audit and Regional Internal Audit Plans, Report 19097 on page 77 of the board package. Trustee Gray, you're up again.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, just before we begin, I'd like to recommend that it be split, as in the first part of the recommendation does concern a different part than the second part. The first part is all about the Deloitte. The second part is more about the regional internal audit plan. So I'm wondering if it's possible to split those apart.
Well, we don't have to worry about that unless if we're going to suspend the rules this evening.
Okay.
We're not going to suspend the rules, so we can talk about that the next.
Okay. All right. Okay, well then I'll make some comments here. The regional internal audit plan for 2019 and 20 will focus on privacy, as concerns over the privacy of personal private information have become important across all industries. As you can see in the report, the objective of the plan will be to provide assurance of the adequacy and effectiveness of information management and privacy practices already in place to protect personal private information. The audit will also support compliance to both board policy and legislative requirements. The second part of the regional internal audit plan will be to include follow-up reviews of the 3 audits already listed in the motion. Thank you.
Okay, are there any speakers that would like to gather more information?
I guess. And there is an amendment that's gone.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So I'm just looking at this report and the one before this, and noting that boards of education, ours included, have a great deal of oversight by external and regional auditors for focusing on internal controls over financial reporting, making sure that all revenues and expenses are accurately captured, spent in accordance with the rules. And this is an ongoing thing. It's not new this year. So I'm just perplexed by some of the commentary in the media at the moment that these guys, being school boards, waste more money than people can imagine. So I just want to, I guess, recognize that many of our members of the public would be reading these things, and just to say that my observation from these reports and going through the budgeting process that's coming up, there are many external controls placed on boards, and wasting money is not something that I've seen, and I just wanted to see if you would agree with that.
100%.
Okay, so there are no more speakers. But great comments. Next up is number 525. Need my glasses. 2019-2020 Capital and Operational Budget, Report 19092 on page 96 of your board package. Superintendent Nguyen, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. As a follow-up to the presentation that we've had at the Committee of the Whole last week on May 29th, trustees are presented with the draft budget report for 2019-2020 for both operating budget and capital budget. And I just see Director Miller looking at our staff that are largely in charge of our operating budget, Allison Robertson, Manager of Budget, and Capital, Sonia Clayton. So they are also here today. If you have any specific questions, we would all be very happy to address them. In the motions that are put forward for next board meetings for approval, we are presenting the trustees with an operating budget of $754,956,645 and a total capital budget of $64,005,723. There have been no changes to the operating budget from the presentation last week, but there has been a little bit of an update to the capital budget as a result of an update to the ministry's forms, which recalculated the school renewal grant. Therefore, there is an increase in grant and an increase in expense that offset each other for just under $70,000. So that's reflected in the package tonight and in the budget workbook that is appended. In summary, the budget contains a net reduction in staffing of 189 full-time equivalents across all employee groups and various reductions in the non-salary budgets across all of our lines. In total, these reductions, cost avoidance and cost eliminations result in a net impact of $25 million. If we factor in the elimination of the future teachers that are currently covered for attrition protection, especially at the secondary panel, the total reductions will amount to $38.5 million. And in our presentation last week, we had a slide that took the reductions in funding outside of growth. So just looking at what it would have been under status quo had we not had various changes in funding. And if you'll recall, if we looked at the end of the 5-year period when all the phase-in was completed, it was about $38.3 million. So the reduction in the operating expenses that we expect is mirroring that. The enrollment projection is expected to grow by 1.3%, or 811.97 average daily enrollment, and that is to a total of 65,453 ADE, or average daily enrollment. We are compliant with all the enveloping provisions, and we have a deficit budget within compliance of $2.5 million, or 0.37% of our provincial allocation. New this year, as I've mentioned in the presentation, trustees are required to approve a recovery plan for any deficit amount, even if it is within the 1% compliance. And Appendix D to the report outlines what the deficit is made out of and the amount of time it would take to recover the deficit, which is mostly within the 2 years, with the exception of the capital incurred amounts that are relating to prior capital projects, which are coming into revenue to offset the amortization on those projects over the life of that asset. And myself and the team would be happy to take any questions trustees may have. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Harrison.
Okay. It's hard to know where to start with all of this information and not great news. Through you, Madam Chair. I looked back to last year's similar report. It was report 18090, and the growth listed last year was 0.6%. So we're double plus 0.1 going forward this year. And yet, under that scenario last year, we received $21 million in the GSN line over the previous year. So in the face of double plus 1, the growth, our GSN line is minus 2.4 million. So as we talked about at committee, the swing is really big. It's 23.5 million, basically. So that in itself is very problematic. So I guess I should get to a question, and that is, we trustees engaged in an extensive consultation to respond to the ministry's consultation around class sizes and e-learning. So I'm just going to focus on the class size one for a moment. And I'm hoping that the ministry hears, not only from us, but from other boards around the province, the challenges that are coming. And I just wonder, given that we're a growth board, I understand that we're marching forward to the 28-to-1 ratio for secondary in a quicker manner than some other boards perhaps that aren't in a growth scenario. And I wonder if there is any merit to considering, or if it's even possible to slow down our, so we're at 24.85, I think, and we still need to get to 28, but is there any advantage or possibility to slowing that down?
Yes, through the chair, that is a calculation that is done and prescribed to us through a B memo by the ministry. So they set out the rules and regulations on how that calculation is done, taking into account an estimate of our attrition factor in terms of what our trends are for the number of teachers who retire or resign in any given year, as well as our growth and the number of discretionary leaves that we have. So none of these are really within our control. It's a mathematical calculation based on the experience of our board that will determine how we progress from 22-to-1 to 28-to-1.
Thanks.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. First, thank you for this report, and I'd like to thank everyone involved who has put it together. It wasn't an easy document. And all the time I've been a trustee, I don't ever believe we've run a deficit. And we've had to notch our belt a bit, but because we've been a growth board, we've had a little bit more play. But now I feel like we're notching our belt and cutting ourselves in half. That's the way I feel, because we're having to make some very difficult decisions regarding cutbacks. And we've heard from programs such as the Bronte Creek Project, and we've heard from people within our community about some of our system leaders and things like that. Even the loss of some of the teachers within the schools because of the class size changes. And when you try to explain it to them, they get it, but they don't. So it's more of I guess my question is, last year or 2 years ago, we had to make a tough decision around the Learning Center. And we committed to trying to make sure that all the students that would have had access to that program would still get access to specific resources within schools to try and help them. Is there a way we can do something similar for those students who have had access to the Bronte Creek Project and the Trailhead Project? Not that we do have to make those tough decisions, but we've heard from some people who are directly impacted by that program, and we do, in this age of mental health, which I believe is the crisis of this time, we do need to be finding ways to help these students, and we're going to have to be doing it with less resources and less money. Is there a way we can commit to trying to find ways to still help these children and make them have access to those outdoor activities and things like that? I believe that we need to make that commitment that we will try. We don't have the resources necessarily to keep the programs going, but we need to try and do the best we can with what we have been left.
Director Miller?
Through Chair Grabens to Trustee Amos, it would be far more difficult to do it for the Bronte Creek Project than it was for the Learning Centers. The Learning Centers students, the students that would be identified for the Learning Centers were students identified with particular needs. The Bronte Creek Project is open to all secondary school students in Halton. It is not a program or a project that is specifically designed to help students with mental health challenges or for students with special needs. We heard this evening from two delegations how it indeed supported those kids and well, one's a young man now, but helped them through there. But that is not the purpose of the Bronte Creek project. It's a project that inculcates environmental, the love of outdoors and environmental aspects and so on. So it will be far more difficult to know to do that because we don't know who's would be intending on taking, who would be going into the Bronte Creek. The learning centers, we could identify those students. We knew who they were, and then we could follow up to make sure that they were not, that they were getting the support they did, and indeed we did so, and they were being supported. I would say this about the Bronte Creek project in terms of more than 50% of our outdoor education budget for secondary schools has been spent on the Bronte Creek project per year. And we have been, it can accommodate up to 80 students, but we have not had 80 students in that program for some time. This year we've got 54, I believe. I might have the number wrong, but it's in the 50s that they have there. So for half the money of our outdoor education program going to support 50-odd students, when we have 19,000 secondary school students, there's a bit of an inordinate amount of money being spent there. Now, having said that, myself, Associate Director Bogue, Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons, Superintendent Salmini, and Principal Taylor, Andrea Taylor, who's our Gary Allen principal, we will be meeting in a couple of weeks to do a review of the Bronte Creek, the elements in there that have supported students, and we'll figure out a way to disperse those broader, I guess would be a way to describe it. And as there's an organization called the Friends of Bronte Creek, I put out an offer that they can meet with us in the summer and give us their ideas as well. So it would be difficult to do the aspect of following up the students, but we could come back to this board and say, here's what we're doing around outdoor education, here's what we're doing around this, and so on. A great number of the students that have gone there have not had particular challenges with mental health and so on. They chose it because they of the wanting to learn around the environmental aspect. Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons, you want anything to add?
Thank you, Director Miller. Through the chair to Trustee Amos, I would just add that we do know that there is experiential education money coming. We don't yet have any of the details of what that will look like. There's also been a real push in elementary and secondary on learning outdoors, which is not exactly the same thing as outdoor education, but get outside and learn. And it has been a big focus in K-12 and will continue to be a focus next year. And once we know what our budgets are, we'll be able to come back and talk about those things that are happening.
I'd like to thank you. I wanted to respond because we did hear from some delegations, and I do believe that it's important that we support as many students as we can, and we also that we incorporate those aspects of that outdoor education so that many students have that opportunity. And if it helps them in learning in different ways, then that's great. So thank you for that.
Okay, Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Last fall, the trustees in this board started or continued actually a campaign that they'd been working on since the previous year on the fair funding concept. And through that campaign, the trustees endeavored to make parents aware in their communities through their school councils just exactly where the Halton District School Board stood in the province in terms of the funding model that was being used, with a thought that perhaps with a new government coming aboard, it was time maybe to look at the funding formula, maybe analyze it and see if in fact it was fair. Now that the funding has come out for this year, it is my understanding that in fact the Halton District School Board has not really moved anywhere on that ladder of funding in the province. In fact, we continue to remain second last or last out of 72 school boards, and again falling further and further away from that provincial average in funding. I think it's very important that the parents, the community members in Halton region understand that though we all express concern about this, there hasn't been an appreciable change. I would ask maybe for your comments on that as you see the perspective that we sit in today with the GSN that we have and the fact, as Trustee Harrison would suggest, in comparing figures from this time last year, we are in fact continuing to fall even further back. Just wondered if you'd have any comments on that to share for our community.
Absolutely. We do historically tend to be the last or second last funded per pupil board in the province. For a growth board, it's always been a challenge when looking at the budget because we have to be as efficient as we can in terms of staffing ratios. And otherwise it's very easily that we would run deficit budgets. And I think the history and the fact that the board is in a low financial risk, so in a really good financial position overall, it is definitely supportive of the fact that the board has been very efficient in how it allocates resources throughout the system, considering that it is one of the lowest, if not at some point, we were the lowest funded school board of the 72. The funding formula also contains certain elements that would provide additional funding to schools that are in different type of demographic areas or in more rural areas. So on one side, we don't get the funding, but we also don't have that expense. Having said that, there's other large urban boards or boards that are in urban settings, which are they get more funding per pupil than we do. So it is a challenge, and we've always worked with what we've had, which will make it, I think, very challenging in the years to come if the funding formula continues to be reduced.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Hey, thanks very much. Through you, Madam Chair. With respect to Bronte Creek project, I just don't want to lose sight of some of the things that I think I heard. And that is that while we can capture some of the things that are special about the program and diffuse them, I think one of the critical and key things is that the program takes a group of kids out of their school environment and puts them somewhere else in nature to learn and collaborate together. So having gone through the PAR with the iSTEM outcome and having our shift mentality, it's my hope that we can capture somehow what I feel like is the essence of that program. Now, I was with some other trustees from other boards on the weekend at a parliamentarian session, learning session, and one of the fellows said, you know, so many people and boards are complaining about all of the cuts, but nobody's bringing solutions for this fiscal responsibility mandate. And so I really, within the context that we're given, I really do hope that we can leverage some of our smarts to come up with something for that program. I also recognize that we're looking at a $750 million budget, so it is but one cut. IPLs, librarians, like this is not a great scenario. Stating the obvious. So that's my statement on Bronte Creek, and a question. If we look at the capital budget and the school renewal and school condition improvement lines, again, if I compare to last year, those are virtually the same, those two lines. There's a bit of a up on the SCI line by $1 million or something. And my guess is, and this is my question, what is the what's the backlog there? How big is that backlog? And does this, like, I'm guessing the backlog is growing exponentially and the funding is staying flatlined.
Thank you. Through you, the chair, to the vice chair. Yes, in fact, that is the sort of pattern that you see, if I can describe it. The deferred maintenance needs go up and the funding doesn't quite match that. So the deferred maintenance backlog for our board is approximately $600 million. And as facilities age and systems age, that continues to grow. But that's the situation that I think most boards find themselves in. And so most boards, as does our board, prioritizes high and urgent repairs. So that would be roofs, mechanical systems, life safety systems, exterior envelope, and then undertakes other work that may not be as critical to the operation of the building, but is still meaningful to the operation of the building. So that would be washroom upgrades, classroom modifications, site work. And so we try to provide a bit of a balanced school renewal program that takes care of some of those critical needs, but also responds to some of the local priorities and the priorities of this board.
Director Miller?
Through Chair Grabentz, to Trustee L. Harrison, I'd just like to comment on your comments. I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I don't think any of us disagree with you, especially some of the superintendents and people in the room who've been intimately involved with the Bronte Creek project for many years, myself included, Superintendent Newton, Associate Director Bogue, Superintendent Hunt-Dibbins. We've all had many of our students go through that program. The challenge has been, and your comment is what we will endeavor to do. But I want to remind, not so much trustees, because you're fully aware of this, but the public, if the public's watching, is that we have been looking at this budget in anticipation of what we expected from the provincial government since November. And the key word there is in anticipation. We were not given the GSNs until April 26th. We're only about 6 weeks past April 26th, and we had to make many decisions rather rapidly to be in compliance and to be able to provide the trustees with a budget that can be that's balanced and can be passed. By doing by the Bronte Creek project, along with some of the other ones that are there as well, and I want to emphasize that the SHIFT program, which is garnering huge success and publicity for this board, has been cut by 75%. We've gone from 2 staff there to no staff, and less money to do things. You mentioned the central, the IPLs, etc. Teacher librarians, it'll be a different way for us to do business. But we are expecting that next year will also be a challenging fiscal year as well. This gives us a little bit of time, I think, to look at things like the Bronte Creek project, find those elements, and see what we can do about it. It gives us, to about this time next year to see if there's a way that we can bring some of those elements, perhaps not all, not in the format it's been for many years, not in the exact way that it's done now, not in the way it was done 35 years ago, but it's done that we can see what we can do. And we do have a bit of time now that we can sit down and reflect on it and look upon it and see what there is to do. All in the climate of knowing that we expect another challenging fiscal year next year and the year after. So I certainly heard the delegations, and I've read the emails, and I understand how people feel. But we have to provide a balanced budget to this Board of Trustees, and difficult decisions are made.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know your comments aren't lost on us, and that the Bronny Creek project, because it was delegated to us and we've heard from many of the community, but we are causing some serious cutbacks in other areas, such as the shift, and it has made a huge change of way of thinking and of practice within this board, and has made a huge impact, even though it hasn't had that big a budget, but it's had enough that it's started something. But now that something is going to roll around with some momentum that may not have somebody to push it along. The things like the teacher librarians and the other factors, I mean, we could go through all this and let the public know all the impacts, and maybe we should. But I think we were just talking about the one because the public has brought it, and we wanted to make sure they understood the impact and we understood what they were feeling. But the fact that we are also losing some of these other worthwhile things, they're also heartbreaking, and it's not to be taken away. So thank you for your comments.
Okay, there's no one on the speakers list, so of course I'm going to say something. And so I have a couple of questions and comments. I think some information needs to be more out in the public. And so at the beginning of your talk, you said there were 180 or 189 full-time equivalent positions that have been lost. Now, with regards to that, I'm sure that there will be a change in what we see in our schools and the service that our students receive and our parents hopefully see as well. And so I was wondering if you could give us kind of a rundown of the types of positions that no longer will exist in our board due to the loss of funding from the province.
Absolutely. We are looking at library teachers, a 50% reduction in library teachers, both at the elementary and secondary panel. We are eliminating the math coaches and a number of learning resource teachers in both panels. The access transitions teachers, shift teachers that were in charge of those programs. A number of special education learning resource teachers and itinerant teachers as well, so reducing that number. We are looking outside of the, so these are mostly outside of the classroom, but there's a large number of classroom teachers that are being reduced, in particular at the secondary level, 78.5 full-time equivalents. And we are expecting over 400 average daily enrollment of the growth to be in the secondary panel. Clerical positions, both within schools as well as central support roles, about 26 of those reductions across our system. The educational assistants that are non-special education, 5. Child and youth counselors, system administration, 2 positions, as well as some management and support staff positions. So the reductions are across multiple employee groups. The impact is going to be felt across the system.
Across the entire system. So looking from a student program perspective, and if we just focus for the moment on the 75 lost teachers at the secondary level, how does that affect, and this is not a question to you, Superintendent Ngoy, this is more to the director, how does that affect our students' program choices and also our classroom sizes?
Through you, Chair Drabens, to you, Chair Drabens, and all other trustees, and I'll look to Superintendent Hunt Gibbons and Associate Director Bogue to also weigh in. We will lose, I believe, if I've got the number correct, we will be down by about 700 sections across our board, a section being a class, which means we will have 700 less classes for students. At this point, it's a wee bit difficult to gauge exactly where those, we can tell you what those classes are, but the impact from in terms of classes being, every year classes are canceled in secondary schools because there's not enough enrollment, not enough students have chosen it. And I'll just randomly pick an example. From when I was principal, we offered Spanish. And we offered it while I was principal of the second Blake Lock. We offered it for 2 years in a row. We never got enough students, and we canceled it 2 years in a row. Third year, we got enough students for a split class of grade 11 and 12. We ran 11 and 12 class. Fourth year, not enough. We ended up taking it off. So that's always happened. The fact is that we have 700 classes across our board canceled means that there's far more of those now. And principals have had to make decisions to cancel classes. Some schools have canceled areas, like a particular subject, and I don't want to say an example, but some of our schools have not canceled any subjects. Some of our larger secondary schools are still able to offer all the courses that they've always offered. The challenge for them is, though, that they will have a large number of small classes being less than the 24.85, which means that they'll also have a large number of classes in the 30s, more likely up in the mid-30s. We haven't quite worked all that out. We have provided the trustees with some information around the number of classes canceled, the number of large class sizes. I can say categorically we have more large class sizes now than we have for next year at this point than we do this year. We've got more classes canceled this year, this coming school year, than we have in the current year. It may play out a little bit different in September because some kids choose 8 courses and they only want to take 6, and then if they're in grade 12. So the real information that the chair of the board is looking for will be better provided in the fall when we have the picture of where the students have shown up and where they haven't shown up. Because we do have situations where kids that are going into grade 12, students going into grade 12, would take 8 courses. They may not need 8 to graduate. They may need 6 to graduate, but they take 8 to try to get what they want, then they might drop 2. I can say this, it has been more difficult, much more difficult for our principals and their leadership teams to section their schools and timetable and staff their schools. One final example, then I'm going to turn it to Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons, where we might see an example of a lost class, but not a lost subject. In a school, we might have 6 sections of grade 11 English. But if those 6 sections, they end up having to drop down to 5 sections. Whereas this year, they would have had 6 classes of grade 11 English. They still have the same number of kids, but they drop to 5 classes of grade 11 English, which pushes up the class size. And there's one final element I want to say about this before. I have a big concern. I have a concern about our teachers, because our teachers will, in essence, particularly if they're teaching senior grades on a university stream, because those are the classes that we let go larger, they will have more students in their class. And I brought this example a couple of weeks to the board, but I'll repeat it now. So you take a grade 11, grade 12 English teacher, who every year students have to do X number of essays, maybe a short story, write a couple of poems, some tests and quizzes and stuff. Being an English teacher, there's an awful lot of marking. So you are, and in all our subjects, but I'm picking English because it's more written. that grade 11, grade 12 English teacher, in essence, if that's all they're teaching, there's a good chance that they will have an entire extra class of students, but still only have their 6 classes. So the numbers will be larger of students, but they still only have 6 classes. So my worry is, what are the teachers going to be doing in the classrooms just to keep up? Will they assign fewer essays? Will they assign fewer poetry examples or whatever? And that could be across the board. We also don't know that, and we won't know that until we're actually in it. So Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons and Associate Director Bogue probably have a couple comments as well.
Through the chair to the trustees, actually, I think that was incredibly fulsome, and I'm not sure I do have anything to add at this point. We are still reviewing things. We are still in the staffing process in terms of filling sections that are out there as well. So in the fall, we'll be able to come back to you and talk about class sizes and the number of class sizes operating on the larger end of things. We've been working very carefully with our HR partners on all of this to try and assure balance in the schools and to actually monitor those classes that are getting really high and to prioritize those on what we call PTCs, which are the pupil teacher contact, and the ratios there as well. So right now we're still in the thick of things, very much so, but certainly once we have everything in place at the beginning of the school year, we can come back with a very fulsome report and let you know exactly where things are landing in our schools.
Okay, thank you very much. David. Oh, sorry, Associate Director Bogue.
Yeah, just a couple of other thoughts. One is around implications is when you take the number of classes and you shrink it to a smaller number. So Director Miller's example of going from 6 English classes down to 5 or going from 3 history classes down to 2, it creates less flexibility in the timetable. And so one of the implications might be that we find out that, and we may not know this just yet, but as guidance counselors work with kids to build timetables or to accommodate new students to the school, there may be less flexibility. And we might find that some kids are having a hard time getting the courses that they want to get. And so there's less, that may be less options for some kids. And the only other piece would be to add would be in some of our program areas or pathways where we typically run very, very small classes like in essential or applied, there will be less flexibility there as well. And those classes may have, our principals are making decisions to keep those classes small at the expense of other classes, but what our measure is of small now may change. And so those classes may creep up in size. And those are some of our kids with our largest learning needs. And so there may be some challenges there as well.
I'll give an example of that. Many of our schools, our secondary schools, in which there's a large number of students in the academic stream and then go to the university college, students are required to have 3 credits of math to graduate. And so they need a pathway to graduate. And in I would say at probably half our schools, there are a handful of students that have challenges completing those 3 credits in math. So many schools will offer a grade 11 workplace math, it's called. And those classes typically in those schools will run at very low numbers, but principals have made good decisions and the right decisions because it's a pathway to graduate for those students. Because if they don't have that 3rd math, they don't graduate. So some of those classes have been 10, 11, 12 students. Well, you can see the implication. If we're at 25 to 1 and we have a math class that's 11 kids or 10 kids or 12 kids, there's a class somewhere else or more than one class that is being boosted up by the numbers. But principals will have to make those decisions, and they do, because if they don't, you've got a student that doesn't have a pathway to graduation. So that we've always had that challenge. It's exacerbated now because the numbers are larger in terms of class size ratios.
Okay, I need a motion to extend Trustee Gray. Yes, seconded by Trustee Collard for 20 minutes. You're hopeful. Okay. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay. Trustee Clark.
May I suggest a 25-minute extension with a 5-minute break in between? So 25 minutes, but 5 minutes included in that. So we'll end at 10:25. Yeah.
I'd like a break right now.
If that's amenable to the board. If we don't have to, if we don't want to.
Any discussion on that? Straight through, straight through.
I retract my
So
suggestion then.
20 minutes. 20 minutes. Okay, we're gonna vote on that. We may have to come back to that. Okay. Motion to extend. Yep, it's there. Go ahead. Vote away. And that carries unanimously. We are extending for 20 minutes. Someone please keep an eye on the clock for me, please. Okay. Okay. So I have another couple of questions. Again, for the public. Under the plan to recover from the deficit, there is something that's listed to cover staff that are not covered by the attrition protection. And I was under the impression that everybody was supposed to be covered by attrition protection. So could you please explain to me why we need something like that?
Absolutely, through Madam Chair and to you. The attrition protection relates only to classroom teachers that have instructional time. It does not reflect any other changes that may be required from some of the allocations that have been reduced or eliminated, or the local priorities funding that has ended, which could span across other employee groups or across teaching positions that are not in the classroom, so centralized positions like the instructional program leads or librarian teachers, for example. And therefore, attrition protection won't have enough numbers to cover for all those positions that have been reduced in the 189 full-time equivalency that we presented. We have tried our best to do the attrition, to do the reductions through attrition to the extent possible, and also suggested that we go into a bit of a deficit for some of the retirements that have not necessarily materialized through the year. And therefore, it's on the recovery plan.
As a growth board, would you say we are in a better position than some other boards under attrition protection, or worse?
Attrition protection covers for what retirements we don't have. So I would think that we are reducing a lot more teachers than other boards. So the attrition protection is lower for the remaining teachers, which is why our class size is higher than most boards, or probably the highest. And I think Superintendent McFadden can probably provide you more information.
Attrition protection is the difference between the number of teachers that we would have lost had we been forced to go directly to 28-1, and the number that leave our board voluntarily, take a discretionary leave. But so because we have so many in that second category who voluntarily leave the board or take a leave of absence, coupled with our growth, that means that we require less attrition protection, because the delta between what we would have had, the number of teachers we would have lost anyway, and the number we actually lost is smaller than in most boards. So it's a mathematical calculation that simply saves the jobs of teachers who would have been lost and didn't leave somehow on their own or be absorbed through growth. So because of our growth and the number of teachers that resign and our attrition, actual attrition, that's why we were able to get, or why we did get farther to 28-1 than other boards. So we require less attrition protection for that reason.
But we're still down 180 positions.
Yes, but attrition protection really doesn't factor into that. It protects us from positions we didn't lose. So the 178 are on the other side of that. They're the ones that we lost and had to absorb on our own because people left the board and we weren't allowed to replace them, or they went on a leave and we weren't allowed to replace them, or we weren't allowed to hire them due to our growth. So all of those three factors are part of those positions, in addition to the positions that we reduced to account for other budget pressures that were not protected by attrition protection, such as the central positions or the outside the classroom positions in schools or the non-teaching positions.
Thank you. Is there a risk that we will not get, that the ministry will come back and say, no, you must run without a deficit?
It's hard to say for certain. The only information we have currently is that it doesn't require ministry approval if it is within compliance. So I would expect not, to the extent that the recovery plan is within 2 years. With the exception of the committed capital and the sinking fund amounts that come into revenue from the deficit, from the surplus, so they come into revenue to cover for amortization of those prior projects, everything else is within the 2-year mark. So I would expect that the plan would be, the ministry would be in agreement with the recovery plan based on the information that's available.
So the vote by the trustees is all the approval that should be needed?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
The one other thing I wanted to ask, it was about what the average GSN is for this year and where we actually stand.
From memory, I believe the average grant for student needs per pupil is 12,256 or 46. And we are below that at 11,000 and just one moment.
No problem. This is an important number. I'll wait.
It's right. So it's 12,246 provincially, and we are $11,019, so 1,227 less per average daily enrollment, and we have 65,453.
So what is that difference from the average, taking into account all of our students?
It's per student. So it's
if
from
you
the
take
average.
If you take that $1,227.
About 80 million, 78, 80 million.
80 million? Did you say 80 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's an awful lot of money that we're away from the average.
Away from the average, yes.
Wow. And other boards, we have comparable boards that are sitting closer to the average. Probably. We don't know that yet.
Well,
perhaps.
We don't know that yet, but it could be figured out because we know where we sit in the league tables of GSN. So we could look at comparable boards.
Okay. I know you'll be back in 2 weeks, so I'm done, and we only have less than 10 minutes to carry out everything else. So there's no more speakers on the speaker list. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this, and you and your staff. So Okay, so we're going to move on to the information items. We have 3 of them. Number 531, 2019-20 school hour bell time report, report 19091, Superintendent Nagoy, on page 105 of your board package.
Thank you. I figured I'll keep the seat hot for a bit longer. As with the prior years, HSTS, or the Halton Students Transportation, the Halton Services Student Transportation Consortium completed its annual bell time reviews for efficiencies, and the Board of Directors has passed the changes that are provided in the report today at their Board of Directors meeting on May 13th. Every year we conduct this review in order to identify and eliminate routes as much as possible and be able to share the same bus on multiple runs and provide savings in our budget. More so for the year that's coming up, this was a very important exercise, and it did lead to a number of bell time changes, and we do recognize that is quite a change for the community. It is disruptive. We try to maintain the change in bell times within 10 to 15 minutes and not a bigger window. It has resulted in savings for the consortium overall of almost $900,000, and that's on the conservative side, which for our share, it's over $500,000. Money that otherwise we would have to find in the budget elsewhere through additional cuts. And I had just mentioned that we were already tallying $25 million in cuts. The transportation budget overall did increase over last year, even with these costs being avoided by $847,000. But we're happy to mention that it is in line with the actual allocation. So we actually don't have to take money from other allocations in the grants for student needs to cover for transportation expenses this year. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of speakers. Trustee Gollard.
Thank you, through you to Superintendent Nagoy. Frontenac was one of the schools that had a bell time change. They already have a 9:15 start time, and they're going to a 9:25 with two 40-minute nutrition breaks instead of a 50 and a 40. And I have done my best to explain to the community that the whole board is moving to the 240 model because of our collective agreements and supervision time. A 9:25 start is going to be very difficult for some families to get to work on time, and some families who may not have required childcare services in the morning may now require them and not be in a fiscal position to be able to afford them. I am wondering if we have given any consideration to ways of assisting families, not financially, but assisting families by providing early morning programs for students, such as Superintendent Etoff suggested perhaps an expanded breakfast program through Halton Food for Thought, so that children who needed to be dropped off early would be safe in being dropped off early. These are unintended consequences, and I applaud the work that's been done to save so much money, but these are very real children, and so I want to make sure that they're all well cared for.
Through you, Chair Gerbents, to Trustee Collard. Excellent points, and you're right, there are unintended consequences. We will take that back to Admin Council and come back at the next board meeting with some possible, I guess, solutions is the best. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just wanted to bring to your attention a request that was made by the Town of Oakville Traffic Services Program Leader with respect to changing the start time at Emily Carr. I believe currently the start time is 8:15. The request was made for pushing it 15 minutes later. And the reason provided is that Emily Carr is located by an incredibly busy intersection of Pine Glen and Postmaster Drive. It's a very challenging, busy intersection, very tight, but very busy and close to Dundas. So it's used as a thoroughfare for people who live in that community to get either to Dundas or down to Upper Middle and then onto the highway. There is a crossing guard in place, but following some conversations I've had a couple of years ago, actually, with the counselor there, Alan Algar, his study was done to look at the traffic flow and patterns and the busyness. And as a result, there was a new pilot project with LED stop signs and whistles that are meant to help reduce safety risks for the students in that area. And the town was actually very helpful in creating some walking maps for the students to navigate the neighborhood so that they correctly use the right side of the sidewalk and use all the crossing guards placed by that school. But more needs to be done to ensure safety, and so the town is doing this pilot project. So this email was sent to the principal of Emily Carr and included General Manager Renzella, myself, and Karen Lacroix from Halton Student Transportation. Karen acknowledged that the receipt of it, and unfortunately, it's too late to accommodate this change for September of this year. But HSTS is planning to look at that for next year. So hopefully that's a go. I just wanted to let you guys know. Thank you.
Trustee Rocha.
Through you, Chair Grabens, to Superintendent Nagoy. Just wanted to echo Trustee Collard's concerns about Frontenac. I've also received some emails regarding the change in time for Falgarwood and exact same concerns, so I won't repeat. The other thing I just wanted to clarify on this report, it simply says that there's a 10-minute later start time, but really there's also a 10-minute, that 10-minute delay means a 10-minute shortage in nutrition breaks. And it's not just for Falgarwood, it's for all of the Oakville schools listed. I think when the communication went out to the families at Falgarwood, there was no mention as to where those 10 minutes were coming out of. So if we could just update this report to reflect that, that would be great. Thank you.
And if I may just to that, we do have a follow-up communication with the communities just to let them know in terms of where those minutes are and in terms of the nutritional break and the history behind it, as well as the move of the board towards 2 40-minute breaks. Thank you.
Okay, that is everybody on that speakers list, and we are at 10:19, and we still have we have a guest tonight speaking about the special education, or available to speak about the special education review report. We also have our consultations. We also have the director's report, and also a request to go back into private session that has come up. But so I think that that we need to extend. I don't think that. I think at this time of the year that we have to be more flexible with our time. Trustee Amos.
I'll make a motion to extend for half an hour.
Half an hour? Okay. Is there any discussion on that?
And ask that everybody be efficient and try and get everything done in that time.
Chair Grabens, I will take the rest of the meeting by phone.
Okay, that's fine. We'll figure that out. Are you going to call in on Crestron? Or are you just going to call me? Okay. Okay, so we need a seconder for that. Trustee Garretts, thank you very much. Motion to extend. All those in favor of extending for half an hour. Okay. That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now up to number 532, Special Education Review Report, Phase 3. Welcome, Superintendent Zonnefeld. This is report number 19094 on page 110 of your board package. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to trustees. Knowing that I only had a minute, I was planning to come up here and not use my presentation, so I have no problem not doing that if that's what you'd prefer. The reports were shared with SEAC last night. There was no presentation there because we focused all of our time on budget, and our time will be spent in September on these reports at that time. So really, these are just being received by trustees. There's lots there. If you've been into the links, I know you've had the summaries, but there are 80, 90 pages of reports there to read and digest. So really, this is just shared for your information at this time, with the intent that we'll be coming forward with recommendations and other reports coming from this in the fall. So this is just for to be received tonight. So I can stop there, or I have slides, but I know you've been given those slides as well. So I'll leave it to the chair what you'd like me to do.
What say the group? Do you want slides?
I will not be offended at all.
Amy, can you hear me?
So maybe,
okay.
if I could, I will only point to one slide, and that's this one.
You've forgotten your flag.
And that's this one here, which is recognition of the steering committee. We've had this review going on for 3 years, and most of our steering committee has stuck with us through all of that. And so I really appreciate the work of the steering committee in helping guide the review. I also want to recognize our external reviewer, Alana Gray, who's here tonight. We intentionally didn't have her at the table because we didn't want to add more time, but I asked her to come tonight to help answer questions. So I would be remiss in not recognizing the great work that she's done for us for phases 2 and 3 of the review as well. I'll stop there, and we can talk more in the fall.
There are a few people on the speakers list. So, Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. I really just want to applaud the team and specifically our external consultant, Alana Gray, who has done a tremendous job. I've been with this committee since inception, and Alana has looked at a vast amount of information and data and was able to, and literature review, because we're looking at what's evidence-based practices, and she was able to really distill the key points for us, creating really wonderful, easy to read reports and summaries and presentations, and I think that's just a tremendous job, and I think it will help our team to move forward, and our superintendent of special services, special education, it's a little late, to take some of the recommendations and be able to implement them and improve the delivery of programs and services for students with special needs and of various and all exceptionalities. So thank you.
Okay, Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, and I echo exactly Trustee Oliver's comments. I had the chance to look at these reports, and they're text-rich, a lot of data, a lot to comprehend. I was particularly interested to see the differences between the self-contained class results in the study to I guess those that are resourced. And I think that I would just urge everyone to take a good amount of time to pore over these reports. I plan to go back through them. I gave a really quick read through them, but there is a lot of very good information in this, and I'm hopeful that all of the great work of all of the committee members here and the research done by Alana will help inform this board as we move forward in our work with our gifted students. So thank you.
May I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yes, my question is regarding the results of students in self-contained and students who are in the regular classroom with learning disabilities and with a gifted profile. And I am wondering if those results that you state are only to do with academic performance.
Through the chair to Trustee Collard, there's a fair bit of detail in the reports that points to performance indicators beyond just academics. So being very conscious of the time and the amount of information there. So I guess the short answer. So the short answer for Trustee Collard is that the results go beyond just academics and look at learning skills, other factors that are reported and recorded, and also the reported perceptions of students and parents as well. So there's a number of factors that are captured in that achievement data. So, but there's a lot of detail to go into there, which I don't think we could do justice tonight.
Right. Would it be possible for me to get some of that data?
A lot of it's in yeah, most if not all of it's in the report. So I think once you have a chance to really dig into that, if there's more information you're looking for, certainly ask and we can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
There are no more speakers on the speakers list. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming out. Thank you. Okay. So next we're up to 533, which is the results of the community consultation, input for provincial discussions on education reform, report 19095, on page 111 of the board packages, and this is presented by all of the trustees of the Halton District School Board. So the as hopefully our community knows, the trustees undertook a consultation in response to the ministry consultation on class size and hiring practices. And we conducted 3 community meetings that were attended by 30 to 50 residents each. And they happened, one happened May the 2nd in Burlington, May 8th in Oakville, and May 13th in Milton, where trustees interacted with the community. We had also asked that people from those consultations, and we also asked broadly through social media, and we also asked parents and guardians of students in the board, and we also asked through our student trustees, the students of the board, to answer a survey. Unfortunately for the parents and guardians, we actually only had a day and a half for them to answer, but they overwhelmingly responded. We had about 6,300 responses come in that day and a half. And the trustees took it upon themselves to analyze what they came up with, or what we heard. And the report is in our board package, but just a few highlights that I'd like to make public through our YouTube live stream. So participants conveyed a number of key messages that they wanted the minister to hear. Consultation needs to come first before sweeping changes are announced. Stakeholders want to work collaboratively to develop the best solutions for students. There is a misalignment between the ministry's stated goals and the planned changes. Class size changes are a great concern and will create many negative impacts on students and educators. More evidence and thought are needed for e-learning. One approach does not fit all. And then statistically, we asked some questions, and just quickly, looking at elementary class size average increasing from 23.84 to 1 teacher to 24.5 to 1 teacher, 95% of respondents expressed concerns about the proposed increase in elementary class size. So this was 95% of almost 7,000 people that responded. With the top 3 concerns being the teacher's ability to teach all students, ensuring student achievement and well-being. Secondary class size average increasing from 22 to 28 to 1. 88% of respondents indicated that the proposed 28 to 1 class size average in secondary school was too high. 96% of the respondents expressed concerns with class size increases, or the class size average increase. And when speaking about the 4 mandatory centralized e-learning courses, fewer than 4% of respondents expressed that they were in favor of the mandatory 4 e-learning credits in secondary school. So that means 96%, over 96% of people were not in favor. So I think that sends a clear message to the ministry. We have submitted through the email that was provided to us our results. We have sent a letter. We have included that in our package to inform the minister of this information, as well as some of the impacts that these changes that are now being implemented are having on our programs and classes right now, especially at the secondary level. We would really like the minister to pause and reconsider. These are incredibly devastating, what's happening in our board right now. I have nothing else to say other than I hope that everybody out there that's watching takes a moment to read what we've done and read what we've written to the minister. So we're going to move on to the notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, the director's report.
Sorry, I have 4 items on the director's report tonight. I'll start off with, I'm going to be looking for some senior admin to weigh in or to provide it. But the first one I want to say, it was mentioned this evening as the trustees approved the external auditor motions, etc. As many trustees, as all trustees know around the table, the province has provided us with, sent us a letter asking if we would want to participate in a line-by-line audit by an external auditor. We have talked about it a little bit at the board table, and we've talked at senior admin, and we believe that our board is pretty lean, and that we have followed our duty in terms of what the province has asked us around finding efficiencies and cuts and being in compliant and providing the trustees with a budget that they is in compliance with ministry policy. So consequently, we will be writing a letter. In fact, we're in the process of writing a respectful letter to gracefully decline the minister's, the government's ask of doing an audit, an external audit. So that's the first one. Second one, I'm going to turn to Superintendent Puccetti to talk about the summer renewal projects.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director, thank you very much. So we have a very busy summer planned. In total, we have about 267 projects planned for this summer for about $31.5 million. But we are facing a few challenges. We continue to see some increased construction or the increased construction activity in the GTA, which is impacting costs. We are still seeing some residual impact of the tariffs, primarily in that the delivery of equipment and the pricing of equipment hasn't quite settled down. So we have seen, in particular for some of our HVAC equipment, lead times for the delivery of equipment going from 8 weeks to 20 weeks. So that means we wouldn't be able to install that equipment this summer. So we're going to be doing some of those projects through the fall as much as we can without disrupting the school. And the other issue we're facing, as you know, is it's been a very, very wet spring. So we have been delayed in starting some of our site work. If this continues, we're probably going to see delays in terms of roofing work and more site work. And finally, there have been some labor disruptions in the construction industry. Currently, I think the plumbers are on strike. Hopefully these will be very short turnaround type strikes, but that is also impacting the shortage of the availability of trades, which impacts our scheduling. So we will be providing you with an update in the fall. And renewal projects, the funding can be carried over. So if we have to stretch and defer some of these projects into 2020, that's what we will do.
Superintendent Puccetti, this is of interest to all trustees. The Susan Milson Award, they will be handed out this year. We have two recipients of the awards, and trustees are welcome to join us. I will be presenting the awards on behalf of the family. The first one is on June 12th at 4 p.m. here at JWS to an MMR student, a worthy recipient. The second one is at Acton on June 17th at 4:30 p.m. and we aligned that with the visit to Halton Hills Municipality that Superintendent Podrebaric, Trustee Gray, and Chair Krabentz are going. All trustees are welcome to come to this award. Susan's family will not be present, but I'll be presenting it on her behalf and their family's behalf. And Dale will be with us as well. So I appreciate trustees around that. Last thing I want to, I just want to turn it over to Superintendent Newton about some really good news.
Thank you. Last evening, we received notice that the Council for Exceptional Children have recognized one of our own, Christine Werich. She's an amazing life skills teacher at Sam Sherritt, and I'll just read an excerpt from the passage. Christine contributes to the welfare of our tiny school and with a special attention to exceptional children with compassion, integrity, and professionalism. Her ability to foster and create an environment in her classroom and in our school is exceptional. Christine helped design a sensory walk in our front hallway this year, a school-based project that considered the needs of not just the students in her own class, but the students in our school. Christine is a strong advocate for her students, and she demonstrates leadership in our school in the area of inclusion and ensuring students are finding success. She builds connections with the parent community. In situations where parents were hesitant to enter our life skills program, she is able to easily demonstrate how student needs are met and parents who visit her classroom feel welcome and want their children to be part of the learning environment that she has created. In her time at Sam Sherritt, Christine has successfully planned and transitioned students into secondary school classrooms, where she takes the time to invite parents to as many transition meetings as it takes to ensure both the student and the parent feel comfortable about moving forward beyond our little school. Much of this work is done on her own time. She's also taken the time to connect parents of students in her own class so they can create a community and support the network. Many of her students have reached out and invited Christine to participate in weekend events, to watch them participate in co-curricular activities on our ball diamonds and soccer pitches. She always takes the time to attend these events and shares with the school community the successes of our students. Christine is an integral member of our team and had the courage to bring her students to perform for Director Miller at the holiday time to trim the tree and to tell him how to do his job. Clearly, Christine has made it her goal to create a sensory room for her students, spend many hours fundraising and creating awareness in our school community about the benefits of sensory breaks for exceptional children. Currently, she has a fully operational sensory room with tools to meet the sensory needs of not only her own students, but the students of Sam Sherritt.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, so up to communications from the chair. You can see that there is a long list of letters coming from other school boards with regards to the impact of the provincial announcements. But we also have at the last, but certainly not least, letter was the voice of our own student trustees. And their letter on page 183 is exceptional, and I hope everybody takes a moment out there. I'm sure all the trustees have already read it to read it, because it does give a student's perspective. They're right there in the trenches. They know what it's like. So these changes, you can see how they impact students directly. And otherwise, up to committee reports. Trustee Oliver.
Thank you, through your chair. SEAC met last night. Superintendent Zonneveld took us through a presentation on and discussion of the proposed budget, with particular focus on teacher reductions, budget reductions, budget additions, and the financial final position. There was a lot of good discussion and questions, particularly around concerns with adequately being able to ensure the safety of our vulnerable students, as well as concerns around reductions with child youth counselors and the psychology services. I think fortunately for us, because of the special education review that has taken place, there are a number of good recommendations coming out of that will hopefully help to fill in those gaps. And you know, I got to say a huge thanks, I guess, and kudos to senior admin for ensuring that the cuts to special ed are not as huge as they, I guess, could have been. They will be, if I'm not mistaken, just under $500,000. So I mean, while that's not a good news, I'm grateful that it's not larger than that. Secondly, SEAC was asked to provide their comments and approval of the proposed special education plan. So that was approved, with the exception of Learning Disabilities Association of Halton, Hamilton, and one of our community representatives who do not approve the plan, and there will be a minority report. I did probe our Learning Disabilities Association rep to identify why there is no, she's not willing, her association is not willing to support. And two things come into play, and that is the lack of, their perceived lack of appropriate assessment, as well as perceived lack of continuation of services through the JK to grade 12 spectrum. And so again, I'm hoping that some of the results from our special education review will help to fill in and guide those processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Yes, Vice Chair Harrison.
Thanks. Through you, Madam Chair, just briefly, the environmental management team met yesterday. Superintendent Puccetti was there as well. Just a couple points. 47 schools completed the Eco Schools certification. And one of the initiatives that Suzanne Burwell, Sustainability Coordinator, has been asked to look into is phasing out or limiting the use of laminators in schools. So that's an interesting initiative. And then secondly, I just wanted to remind everybody that we're meeting for Committee of the Whole next Wednesday. Budget, again, will be a big focus. We also have a presentation on vaping and a couple of action items that have been suggested by trustees. So I look forward to seeing everybody there.
Trustee Daniele.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I am very pleased that I am once again able to sit on the Human Rights Symposium Committee to represent the North. Thank you to Trustees Garretts and Gray for allowing me to do that. Just a hold the date for December
To you.
for the next Human Rights Symposium, location in Burlington, and focus will be on the rights of the child, and I'll bring more information as available.
Thank you. Okay, we're up to trustee questions and comments, and if we could make them snappy, that'd be great. Vice Chair Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I was just wondering whether the budget materials can be posted on the website, the stuff from this night. Thank you.
Okay, and seeing no others, there has been a request to go back into a private session.
30 seconds.
For 30 seconds by, I don't know. Okay, so we will, can I have a motion to go into private session? Seconded by, so Trustee Amos, seconded by, it was Joanna Oliver, Trustee Oliver. Kelly. And is there any discussion at all on that? We're going to be zippy on this. So all those in favor of, oh, is it rise and reconvene? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Collard. Everybody else? Okay, we are now in private session. That carried unanimously.